Okay, it's 6:30. We'll call this meeting to order. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Ritchie and Coughlin. That the regular meeting of the Council of the Township of Springwater of September 5th, 2018 come to order at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. And I'd ask you to stand if you're able to sing the national anthem and then remain standing.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Please remain standing for a few moments for private prayer or private reflection. Please be seated. I'll now turn to council and see, is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in any of the matters on tonight's agenda? Councillor Coughlin.
9.1,
Thank you. And what's the nature of your conflict?
it's my husband's company.
Thank you. So we'll move into, we have a deputation here with Tara Popple regarding the crosswalk light at Queen Street. So please come forward, take your seats, and I'll turn the floor over to you. And when you're complete, just remain there because council may have some questions.
Great. So I've also brought my husband, John Popple, with us. So overall, the presentation to you tonight is in regard to the crosswalk light that is at the intersection, I guess in the center, between Queen Street East and Shaw Street and Queen Street East and Simcoe Street. So there's a crosswalk light that's right there. If you turn to the second page, you can actually see actual images of the crosswalk. So we come to you tonight with three main issues. The first is the hedge at the intersection goes against the traffic and parking bylaws, as well as the zoning bylaw, and it's impeding people's ability to see the crosswalk, see anyone in it when they're turning from Shaw Street onto Queen Street. Issue number two is inadequate signage at the intersection. People are not always stopping at the light. Someone, in fact, today just commented that their child was almost hit this morning in the crosswalk. Issue number three are overgrown trees blocking the signage that there is an upcoming light. So what we wanted to bring to you tonight is we believe that the signage needs to change due to the number of people who use the light daily. That includes children that are crossing the road who go to each school, which is Lourdes and Huronia Centennial. But it also includes seniors at Sarah Vista who need to cross the road to go to Foodland, to go to the pharmacy, and all residents and visitors to Elmvale, whether that's daily or during our various festivals and fairs. We also have the new splash pad, and a lot of people are crossing the road to get to the splash pad since we can walk to it, and there's so many people that this is affecting. So issue number one, the lines of sight near the crosswalk at Queen Street East. The sight lines do not conform to the Springwater's traffic and parking bylaws, as well as the zoning bylaw. So my husband will speak to this next part.
So we just wanted to bring council's attention to two of your bylaws. The traffic and parking bylaw 2005-018 defines a highway, and certainly that Queen Street East meets the definition of a highway under your bylaw, including Shaw Street and Simcoe Street. And within that bylaw, section 23 deals with the obstruction of highways, ditches, and culverts. And the hedge that's located at 38 Queen Street East is within that highway. And is encumbering. So under section 21, it indicates that no person shall obstruct or encumber or foul the highway. I measured from the center line of Queen Street East, and the hedge falls in within about 30 feet of the center line of the road, so it's certainly within the municipal road allowance. And it causes some significant sightline issues for vehicles turning off of Shaw Street onto Queen Street East. Secondly, within the township's zoning bylaw, it defines sight triangles, daylight sight triangles for intersections. And in that bylaw, it specifically states that no hedges can be maintained or erected or planted within 10 meters or 32.18 feet of an intersection. If I can go to this photograph. It's a little hard to see, but on the ground, on the sidewalk is my tape measure. Measuring from the intersecting lines of Shaw Street and Queen Street East, the first 26 feet of that hedge are within the sight triangle. And in my opinion, consideration should be given to the removal of that hedge. If you're a vehicle pulling up to that intersection and stopping at the painted stop line on Shaw Street, it's impossible to see that signalized intersection. And if it's red and somebody makes that right-hand turn, which happens this morning and daily, it causes people to run that red light. Secondly, you can see in this photograph, there's also a vehicle that's been parked within the intersection, causing additional issues. So enforcement of the parking bylaw for intersection parking should also be considered.
And we have made a bylaw complaint.
Yeah, there's been a bylaw complaint filed under the zoning bylaw in relation to the sight triangle, and a bylaw complaint has been filed in relation to the obstruction of the highway under the traffic and parking bylaw. Again, just to go back over, our concerns are that in a small car, it is very difficult to see around this hedge. Not only vehicles traveling on Queen Street East, additionally, it's hard and impossible to see pedestrians walking along Queen Street on the sidewalk. So little kids coming up from the local church where our kids go and sing in the choir in the evenings, or other pedestrians, it's impossible to see them and they can easily step out in front of you making that turn. Larger vehicles need to pull way out quite a distance to see around the hedge to make sure that it's safe to make that turn. So those are our main concerns at that intersection.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this picture demonstrates that individuals are parking within the intersection. So not only is the hedge obstructing visibility at the intersection, but there's also vehicles. So possibly additional signage is required in that area to restrict parking further.
So, do you have any questions for us so far? No? Okay. Okay, great. Issue number 2 is the general safety of the crosswalk. We believe that a change of signage is needed to ensure that all who use the crosswalk are safe while they're crossing. So back in April, I sent an email to my counselor, Katie Austin, as well as to Heather Coleman, outlining my concerns about the light and the impediments of the trees and hedges at the intersection. Heather Coleman and Katie Austin have gotten back to me. The suggestion of Katie Austin was to place a 3-way stop at the intersection to ensure that people are always stopping for that crosswalk light. That hasn't happened yet, but I thought I would include that. Heather Coleman of Public Works also suggested I be aware of the cost to change the signage. She seemed quite concerned about the cost. So I will speak to the costs in just a minute. The next issue, we put a better picture up on here. So I actually took this picture yesterday coming down from Orr Lake on Queen Street East. Just if Nash Street is here, Bertram Street is just here. And so I'm coming into town. Here's the 50. The crosswalk sign is behind this tree. You cannot see it on the way in. The image that is actually in your package is quite dark because the sun that was 2 days prior was in our line of sight, and again, there's no way to be able to see that. So because the costs were mentioned, I decided to look into it. The example of the signage that I'm requesting tonight, this is an image from Google Earth that shows the brand new signs that the town of Innisfil has actually erected on the 20th Side Road where they had numerous accidents. So this is the 20th Side Road heading toward Barrie. So I would like to see double the size of the signage as well as a solar flashing red light to inform motorists about what they're coming upon. So the next quote has the information from the town of Innisfil's Senior Administrative Coordinator of Operations. She stated, as per our conversation, here are some rough costs of what it would be to put in a 4-way intersection, which obviously we would not need to do here, with flashing beacons. The signs with the bars are about $300 each. The flashers cost $1,400 each. So a total for 4 of them would be $6,800. So we would not have to spend that much because it is just a 3-way intersection. So I did do a follow-up with that quote to my counselor, Katie Austin, on June 18th. I again called Katie Austin on the week of July 9th and was told that I should get a delegation together of potentially 60 people or show a petition to council. Now, because it's the second day of school, a lot of people are busy, so I decided to go the route of getting a petition together. So the next slide, I'm actually going to update that number because as of 5 minutes ago, we do have 126 different people who have signed the petition on change.org. At the very back of your package is a copy of all of the people who have signed up to number 112. So you can see that just at the back, there's a title page that says change.org, and on the next page, you can see all of the people who have signed, and you can see all of the people from the various areas. Not only did I start that petition, but I decided, well, actually, as for the petition, I've mentioned too many times people have not seen the lights. I know many people have had to stop crossing as someone drove through the red light. The signage needs to change due to the number of people who use this light daily. So further down, if you can go to the next slide, if I call your attention 2 months ago to Sue Kerslake's comment, which is on change.org, the crosswalk is very dangerous. It is not marked well enough for cars. The fact that cars turn right onto Queen, don't see the crosswalk, and that this is dangerous for anyone who is in the crosswalk. The residential trees also add to the confused visual. Please add more effective signage to keep the pedestrians safe. Today on Facebook, again, there was another parent complaining that, again, they were told, a vehicle tried to come through. My husband and I tried to cross one night around 4 o'clock with our children, and a County of Simcoe transportation vehicle started to blow through the light before we waved our arms and let him know that the light was red. So for a County of Simcoe transportation truck, it's a huge vehicle. Any of our children, including us, would have been seriously hurt. Not only did we do that, but I decided to start a household petition and walk around. Now, it was the summer, so I did only get to a few homes. I'm also going to update these numbers. So number 112 is now 126 for the online supporters. And the homeowners, we were able to get more signatures at Friday's Farmers Market, thank you, in Elmvale. So that number is actually up to 91. So instead of 188 households who have supported this, we have 217. So if I look at the 60 that was suggested, we do have 3.5 times that amount. So we can flip through the next one.
Can I ask you to wrap it up?
Absolutely.
About 3
So,
minutes over.
If we can go to the next one. What would we like to see happen? We would like to see a stop sign at the intersection of Queen and Shaw and another at the intersection of Queen and Simcoe. I would also like to see those new stop signs be double the size of the current warning signs with the flashing light above it. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll turn to council. Councillor McConkey.
Thank you. You've done a lot of research, great presentation. You mentioned that you went to bylaw. So how long has this been in the process, this request?
I'll be honest, the complaints with bylaw were filed this afternoon, so that hasn't been acted on to
Okay.
date, so, and I
Okay.
totally get and understand that.
But you spoke to the counselor in July, I understand, and you also spoke to,
So back in April was the first time.
with the counselor. Was anyone ever inform you to follow, did the counselor ask you to follow a traffic calming policy?
So that is what Heather Coleman got back to me. So if you turn your sheets to the
Yeah.
next page, Appendix C, the public request form, is included in your package, so that's here.
Oh, okay, I haven't looked at
Yep,
this yet.
nope.
So you did complete a traffic calming policy?
So you can't, we could not find a way to modify the PDF file that's online, so we completed it here for you.
Okay,
Yeah.
because, I'm just wondering why you're here making a presentation, because our staff is really good at following up with traffic calming policy measures, like we've put it in place, and there's sort of a process, and you have jumped and done the petition, so that could be part of it, but you might not have even had to do a petition based on what staff would have found once you complete the material, and our CAO can correct me if I'm wrong. I just know that we worked hard on this policy, and I just want, I haven't heard any of this from staff, a report. Usually when there's traffic issues or something and everyone's aware, we get a report, and honestly, I have no problem with what you're saying tonight, but I don't know what staff has to say on the recommendations, and they are safe, they protect us with safety and stuff like that. So for, as a counselor, I can't recommend what you're doing, but it sounds great to me. So I would rather see a staff report come out of this and know what's right and wrong and how we can help them.
Yeah, before I go to Councillor Hannah, I think that'll be the ultimate outcome, is obviously we have the delegation, the presentation, the information. And of course, we do need kind of professional input on it, and we'll be asking our director to provide an appropriate report on it and whatever action we can take. Councillor Hannah?
Thank you, Mayor French. Thank you for the delegation. Great job. And I can assure you this council and staff take public safety serious. I just have one question. If you could just go to slide 7. I have it as page 7. I'm not sure what slide number it would be.
What's it
Is it the
in reference
parking?
to?
It shows a vehicle parked with the Canadian flag hanging over the edge. That one there. From the traffic light, I can't tell. Does that have one of those, does that intersection have those walk, don't walk things for pedestrians? I don't know whether that would be something that would assist her in this problem or not, but I couldn't tell from that if they had it, so maybe that's something else staff would be able to look and see the value of that. I know they have them in most intersections, so the pedestrians know when it's safe to cross the road.
So that, go ahead, John.
Sorry, through your worship to Councillor Hannah. Yes, there is a walk, don't walk sign for pedestrians crossing Queen Street East. There's a button, but I guarantee you that if you press that button and follow the directions on that stop and don't walk, you will get hit. We do not allow our children to step out on the walk signal because people will come off Shaw, or they'll come, they'll make a right turn off of Simcoe, because if you're sitting on Simcoe Street, you cannot see the lights above you. So they're making an illegal, well, I don't know if it's an illegal turn, but they're making a turn on a light they can't see.
So a solution may be no right turn on red light. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out for staff's attention, so thank you again.
Councillor Austin, and then Deputy Mayor Allen.
Through you, Mayor French, to Mr. and Mrs. Popple. Where is it? Page 5, the hedge there. Okay, that's, yep. I'm very familiar with that hedge and that intersection, and that hedge is not that old, I recall. To me, I think you have a serious case, and you've brought it up with bylaw. You said that you put in a complaint this morning. I think that change is doable and reasonable. That one, and then on page 7, where you have a picture of a van. Well, that one. Okay, that's fine. The picture of the van parking there. I think you have a valid point. Oh, can you tell me what the sign says?
Stop here on sign,
On signal.
on signal.
Stop here on signal, but that car is parked there, is that
Yes,
correct?
so-
See, the thing is that, that person may have parked there when it was a green light. But, another easily doable thing, if Public Works were to agree to it, would be to make that a no parking spot. So have the diagonal lines there. So again, that's a doable, reasonable, and inexpensive suggestion. The other one on page 8, or maybe it was, no, on page 13, what I would like to happen, just so it'd be second last slide, what I would like to happen. The first bullet there, you would say, I'd like to see a stop sign at the intersection of Queen and Shaw. There already is a stop sign at the intersection of Queen and Shaw if you're coming south. What you're looking for is a stop sign at the northeast corner for people coming in from Orr Lake. So they would have to stop at coming in an easterly direction, westerly direction, right?
I think
So-
that would also help with the speeds. We have had
Yes.
numerous police calls, not only from us, but from neighbors for the speed that people
Yeah.
are traveling through there. I think that would help to
Right.
calm again.
Right. And again, if that were acceptable to our traffic calming policy, that would be another relatively inexpensive thing. The question about the flashing lights, the slide that you had of Innisfil, it's on page 9 for the council. The example on Innisfil, 20th Side Road, that one, there's a stop sign, a big stop sign with a flashing light. Is that flashing light on all the time? Does it
Yes.
flash 24 hours a day?
Yes.
Yeah. That might be, for one thing, it would be a cost thing, but it might also, it might also be an effect on the local neighbors, the people who, that flashing light, flashing in their window 24 hours a day. It's something that I think we have to consider, okay? So the first three, your first three suggestions for the, basically are almost kind of like a four-way stop, so increased stop signs, and the, getting rid of that parking spot, and cutting down the hedge, those three might go a long way to alleviating the problem. And I'm just, again, it's something, as staff or council's pointed out, it's something that we have to work with staff on to see that it fits in with our traffic calming policy. But we really appreciate you bringing this to our attention, because we respect the fact that you're thinking not only of your own children, but the rest of the community. Thank you.
Can I just add also the tree trimming?
Yes, yeah,
That's
for sure.
blocking that sign.
Yes,
It's a birch tree further east on Queen Street that's obstructing the
Okay.
traffic
Right.
light ahead sign.
right. And again, that's an easily doable thing and very, very low cost.
Yeah, I think, and before I go to Deputy Mayor Allen, I think one of the important thing is that, you know, we seem to be having the debate and discussion on what we're going to do, and yet we haven't had the opportunity of having the professionals provide some input, because maybe they have other solutions, I don't know. But the reality is, I'm not sure we should be kind of suggesting these are solutions and that until we have some recommendations. But with that said, Deputy Mayor Allen.
That was, through you, Mayor French, exactly what I was going to say. I mean, we're trying to solve this, yet we have a traffic calming policy that involves input to the staff, and you've done a very good delegation here today. You've done a lot of work, you can see. But I'm very anxious to hear from the staff their suggestions and ideas to ameliorate this situation.
Councillor Coghlan?
Thank you, Mayor French, and through you to the Popples. I think Tonight, there will be a resolution at the council table requesting staff to bring forward a staff report to us, and that time there'll be options provided to staff, or from staff to council. We can go through those options at another time to figure out which one's gonna work best for the community, if we are supportive of that. So we can also tonight request that it be a rushed report, so that it's not by the end of the school year that we get it. So it's another step, but it is. So thank you for bringing this to our attention, and we'll make sure that that resolution is done tonight.
Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mayor French. Thank you for coming. Excellent presentation. Long overdue, I agree. I remember not too many years ago, I was taking my kids over to Lourdes, and that is a busy crosswalk. A lot of people move across there. And having said that, because school has just started, I would ask Mayor French that we can ask staff to expedite this as much as possible, to see what we can do for recommendations to try and get this, because school has started, because there's a lot of people crossing there. We need to work on this and act on it. So I would ask that staff do their due diligence. Thank you.
And maybe, unless there's other comments, I know we're kind of modifying, just accepting the delegation with referring to staff, and maybe we can specifically ask staff to report at the next council meeting. CEO Brindley?
Your worship, yeah, I would prefer a month. Like if we have it ready for the next council meeting, we'll get it to you, but that's really, our report deadline's next week. So, if we can have another week or two, we'd appreciate that.
Valid point. So anyway, you'll hear the resolution. I'll read the draft here, and then I'll ask for a mover and a seconder, that the delegation from Tara and John Pop will be receiving that staff report back to council regarding potential options for the area, and that the report be expedited to the October meeting. So that's the tone of it. CEO Brindley?
No, Mr. Mayor, just wanted to emphasize that issues related to operational things like tree cutting and stuff, we'll be on that right away.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's an important point. Some of the things will be responded to immediately because they've been brought to our attention, whether it be trimming or whatever the case may be. So we don't have to wait for the staff report for that to happen. So with the way it's worded, can I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Austin, Deputy Mayor Allen. And I'll just read it again. The delegation from Tara and John Pop will be receiving that staff report back to council regarding potential options for the area, and the report be expedited to the October meeting. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you for your delegation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done. Okay, we'll now move on to the minutes of council, 6.2 and 6.4. Can I have a mover and a seconder to get this on the table? Hannah and Coughlin. That the minutes of the council items 6.2 through to 6.4 be approved and as presented. Anybody want to speak to those? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Now, minutes of boards, committees, and other organizations. Can I have a mover and seconder to get this on the table? Coughlin, Hannah. That the minutes of boards, committees, and other organizations, item 6.6, be received as information. Any comments? All those in favor? Oh, sorry. Councillor McConkey.
On the education development charges?
No problem. Okay, all those in favor? Carried. And now, oh, sorry, yeah, I almost missed the question period. Wouldn't want to miss that. So this is an opportunity for anyone in the audience to come forward. If there's a question on an item on the agenda, we'd love to address it. And if it's not on the agenda, we'll try to respond or get back to you sooner than later. So I invite anybody that has a question or comment to come forward. Okay, seeing none, we will now move on to correspondence and information items, 8.2 to 8.6. Can I have a mover and a second for that? McConkey and Hannah. The correspondence and information items 8.2 through to 8.6 be received as information. Do we want to speak to, now, this one, okay. Councillor McConkey.
And with this education development charges, I guess what I've read are they're looking at having development charges. And will our staff do a report as a result of this? Like, I wasn't planning on attending. Was anyone here planning on attending? And what do we get as a result of this? Like, I think somehow we all have to be informed of how this impacts us.
As a matter of fact, actually, I brought that up with Director Schmidt, and that's why we put it on here, so we can comment on it, because I was asked, is there something that I should take and maybe present at this meeting? And so we'll have a discussion here, and I guess whatever comes out of this discussion, and I'll let Director Schmidt lead into this and make his overview comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to members of council. So subsequent to receiving this letter, we actually received an invite, staff have received an invite to attend a stakeholder meeting tomorrow. So I will be attending tomorrow morning along with, I believe, our chief building official. We attended a session in April when they originally first proposed their new development charges. So they've had development charges for a while now, but they are proposing significant increases to their development charges. And so because of that, obviously some of the players or some of the municipalities have spoken up, more northern municipalities in the county have spoken up stating that they don't agree with the development charges that are being proposed at this stage. So I think tomorrow's meeting, the intent is they've gone back and they've done some further analysis, and they'll be presenting, I guess, their findings at tomorrow's meeting, which is only available to certain stakeholders, and then on Monday evening, it's open to the public. So I can definitely prepare a report, or if members of council wish the mayor to attend on Monday to speak, by all means, we'll leave it at that.
Councillor McConkey?
So when we hear the school board talk and they want budget and that, they always talk about bums in the seats, and they don't do their funding mechanism until they have their bums. They don't build as a school until that happens. Yet with DCs, it's all based on forecasts of growth. So are they behind because they don't do forecasts? Because, you know, in the other breath, when we speak with them, they're always asking, they have no money, they want partnerships. So here we are partnering with them, giving them money and helping them, and then I just wonder how they do their calculation, like the two calculations don't match. And so either we're ahead and they're behind, or something's going on, so they have to match with us, because I think it would be easier on the residents too as they build up for this growth. So I just don't know how that works.
Director Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor McConkey. So just to provide some clarification, on the school board education development charges, those DCs are only for acquisition of land, no money towards facilities. So that's why there is a discrepancy there. So they have a different funding mechanism as it relates to the actual building of a structure. So EDCs, or educational development charges, are only for acquisition of land.
And I guess just to add to Director Schmidt, I think the conversation that came out and the reasoning behind it was the land is much more expensive now. I think is really what they're saying. Councillor McConkey?
I don't know if I agree with that, because they're given the land by the developers. We've already given them land for 2 schools through DC, I imagine. Can't see the developer giving it any other way.
Director Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor McConkey. You're correct. In some particular cases, they do, developers do provide land in lieu of, if you will, but not in all cases. So the education, or the county, or the school boards get together and determine how many schools or how many sites are going to be required over the next number of years. And to the mayor's comment, what's happened is that they did some appraisals back in the last time they did their update, I guess 5 years ago, usually they do updates every 5 years or within 5 years. And the appraisals that were done at that time were much lower than what they are now. Now, what they're seeing is that some properties or sites in southern Simcoe County are going for substantially higher prices. So property values have increased over the last number of years. And so in some cases in Bradford, West Gwillimbury or Innisfil or New Tech, you're seeing properties go for $1 million plus. And that's how they were kind of justifying a substantial increase in the economic or in the educational development charges. Again, property values in the north of Simcoe County have definitely not increased that in that same fashion, and hence why they've gone back. And again, tomorrow, hopefully, we're going to see what they're proposing. I did caution, and I wrote a report earlier in the year indicating that, fair enough, they may come up with an area-specific DC, which actually could either benefit us or actually could not be beneficial to the township, depending on where they draw the lines. If it's area-specific to each municipality, I'm not sure they're going to do that. Or if it's an area-specific where they draw a line where this is the north and this is the south, depends on where we fall into that mix. So again, tomorrow, hopefully we'll have some better information. Unfortunately, they haven't provided anything in advance of the meeting, so I'm kind of at a loss as to what they're going to propose at this stage.
Continue.
It's one I probably shouldn't ask, but I've been told too that they often don't need, like we've put this property aside, they may not need it, and in past, and depends how you've written the agreement, they can sell that property. And that property, you know, the teacher's pension is pretty good. So anyways, I just wanted to know how many properties they have sold.
Director Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, Councilor McConkey. So I can't answer the question about how many properties they've sold, but in my past experience, you're right. In some cases, they do determine over a number of years that the land is surplus. But in those particular cases, and similar to a municipality, there's certain criteria that you have to go through in order to be able to sell property. You can't just sell it on the open market. There are different bodies that have to, essentially, there's a pecking order where they have to notify and allow them to, the opportunity to take on the land. And in some cases, it may be that the developer gets first right of refusal, or first, whatever the phrase is, but they get first option, if you will. So.
Councillor Austin?
Off topic, Mayor French, but there's a black pickup truck GMC whose lights have been on, and the lights are fading now. So whoever owns that truck might want to check on it.
Okay, back to our regularly scheduled program. Actually, one question that, and I was thinking of it because of something Councilor McConkey said. For the most part, though, most of the schools now that are being required are because of development. And isn't it the case in most development of properties that, or of new subdivisions, that the developer is required to provide a space for schools if needed at no charge? I'm just curious. Director Spagnol.
Thank you, Mayor French. It is a consideration that happens through the development process, and that's why the school boards are circulated those applications. And it's at that time when land can be set aside for a school.
I guess my only suggestion, and actually we have the other items, and I think probably the best thing is let's deal with the other items except for 8.6. Okay, moved by McConkey, second by Hannah, that correspondence and information items 8.2 through to 8.6 be received as information with the exception of item 8.6 to be dealt with separately. All those in favor? Carried, so we got that one out of the road. I'll turn to council now. Do you want to have a simple resolution that, because I'm quite happy to present some brief that's prepared by information from our Director of Finance at that open forum next Monday, if that be the will of council. I'm not going to create my own. I'm going to follow through on whatever concerns comes out of possibly tomorrow's meetings, and maybe some points that come up before then that we can just pose. It's not, I'm not going to prepare it. I'll have Director Schmidt prepare it and CEO Brindley. So could I have a mover and a seconder on that then? McConkey and Hannah. We'll just see what's being written here. Director Schmidt, what are they calling that meeting, that public meeting? Is it just public meeting on EDC charges?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, tomorrow's meeting?
No,
Or-
sorry, the one on Monday?
The one on Monday is a public meeting.
Yeah. Okay, it'll read something to the effect, McConkey and Hannah moved and seconded, that correspondence and information items 8.6 be received as information, that the mayor be directed to present at the school board public meeting regarding educational development charge with information as provided by the Director of Finance. Is that broad enough and cover enough? Okay. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, we'll move on to action reports, and Councillor Coghlan has declared a conflict on 9.1. So to get it on the table, can I have a mover and a seconder? Austin and Richie. The report from planner regarding SP-2018-001 1748290 Ontario Limited, dated September 5th, 2018, be received, that the mayor and clerk execute the necessary agreements once all technical aspects are addressed to the satisfaction of the township solicitor, township consulting engineer, and staff. Questions of anyone? Councillor McConkey.
Well, it looks great to get industrial to come into the township, which is very nice. The only question I have, and it's related to Hillsdale Secondary Plan. I know as part of the Hillsdale Secondary Plan, we wanted servicing, I believe, in this area. And yet the last thing I saw from Hillsdale, the plan was that they weren't going to provide full infrastructure. So I just want to know from long-term perspective, what are we all thinking here? Will there be infrastructure there? Like, if there is, would there be a condition that it has to hook up to the infrastructure? Or how do we, I don't know where we're heading with this.
Good question. Director Spagno.
Thank you, Mayor French. To Councillor McConkey. I guess firstly, the Hillsdale Secondary Plan, there's still some discussions with the developers regarding the infrastructure that needs to be in place to support those subdivisions. However, one point to make is that the provision of water is still on the table and has always been on the table with respect to Hillsdale. So that hasn't changed. As it relates to the site plan application here, there have been past requirements where full services have been put in place. There have been requirements for property owners to tie into those services once they become available as part of an agreement. That is a standard process if there's infrastructure that's planned to come forward. So that's something that we'll most likely be taking a look at through the agreement process. It's no different than when we've got a residential lot where there might be some infrastructure that might be coming by or might be made available to the property owner. So that's typically how the township would deal with that. As far as knowing where we're going with Hillsdale, that's all going to have to be dealt with from an infrastructure standpoint when we deal with the development applications that are currently being discussed now. So to my mind, what we have here is a property that is zoned for the uses that it's being proposed. They provided the necessary servicing report and all the engineering to go along with it. So at this stage, staff is recommending that it's appropriate to move forward through the agreement process to allow them to move forward, with the fail-safe stating that if services are made available,
They would be required to connect. Okay, I think that's your question. Any other questions on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, 9.2. Road naming. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Ant Mills here. Councillor Hanna and Councillor Coghlan. And I will read the report from the planning technician regarding road naming within the estates of Ant Mills subdivision dated September 5th, 2018 be received. The council accepts the proposed road names Cottonwood Street, Winterberry Drive, White Cedar Street, and Red Maple Road, and that the appropriate road naming bylaw be submitted to council for consideration. Any questions on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Report 9.3, again, securities for Jim Bertram and Sons. Can I have a mover and a seconder on this one? Deputy Mayor Allen and Councillor Coghlan. The report from the planner regarding the reduction of securities for the Jim Bertram and Sons site plan number SP-2017-002 be received. That securities held by the township are reduced to $5,703.50, and that additional securities being $11,407 be released to the developer. Any questions on this? Standard activity. All those in favor? Carried. Another securities reduction for Tanak Ridge. Can I have a mover and a seconder on this? Ritchie, Coghlan. The report from the Director of Public Works regarding the reduction in securities for Tanak Ridge dated September 5th, 2018 be received, that $198,213 be released and $10,000 be retained for a period of 6 months. All those in favor? Carried. And the paramedic facility, I believe. I'm on the wrong one. Yes, okay. I can have a mover and a seconder for that. Austin and Ritchie. The report from the senior planner regarding SP-2018-002 dated September 5th, 2018 be received. The mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the necessary agreements once all technical aspects have been addressed to the satisfaction of the township solicitor, township consulting engineer, and staff. All those in favor? Oh, sorry, do you have a question? Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Mayor French. It's actually a comment. I'm pleased to see that this facility is coming to Elmville. I have asked our deputy clerk to contact Jennifer Marshall at the county to let the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee have a look at these plans too. to just to go over them with a fine-tooth comb and give any advisory comments as far as accessibility is concerned, because it being a day-out facility for seniors, there may be some insights that the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee can provide.
Thank you. Any other comments? All those in favor? Carried. Okay, now on to action report, the final council committee review. And what we're going to do, now turn it over to the clerk or deputy clerk for an introduction and how we're going to conduct this.
Thank you. So at the August 1st meeting, council was presented with a report outlining a preliminary recommendation regarding the various committees of council. This is a report that encompasses all of council comments that were received over the last month. It provides for a recommendation on various committees, continuing of certain committees and dissolving other committees. It also has a strict structure on what type of committees are classified under what types of names, so standing committees of council, working groups, and whatnot. And as well, we outline the legislative requirements of specific committees. So to foster the discussion, what we found would be easiest is to go one by one through the committees. So a motion will be put on the table. For example, the first one, the Agricultural Advisory Committee. Council would have a discussion surrounding that committee only, deal with that motion, and then move on to the next committee. So that'll help guide the conversation to ensure we stay on track and get all of the comments needed on those specific committees.
And do you want to accept the report first before we actually approve the committees? Do you want to do any overview, or shall I just table the resolution to receive the report first? Okay. Can I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report? And then we'll make the decisions, Hannah and Coughlin. The report from the deputy clerk regarding the final council committee review dated September 5th, 2018 be received. All those in favor? Carried. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sasha.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. Just to follow up from August 1st report, I know that there were some questions in regards to changing the working group definition. I kind of wanted just to give a little bit of background in regards to that. In our procedure bylaw, we have the right, council has the right to establish working groups. The clerk and I, we reviewed some ombudsman reports, and we would like to change the definition of a working group so that that's only staff members on a working group. The reason why is because committees and composition are defined under the Municipal Act, but the ombudsman found that definitions of committees can also pertain to their role and function, and working groups can lay the groundwork for council decisions and council movement, and we felt that working groups, in staying with the ombudsman report, should only be providing administrative functions. So those working groups that have council members on them, we felt it best to keep them or change them to advisory committees, because they have the ability to lay the groundwork for council decisions and for moving forward with council. So that's why that change was there. We really tried to spell out the legislative requirements in this report, especially with Bill 68 coming out, requirements in regards to the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, having to have written statements when someone has a conflict. That applies not only to council but committees as well. With the introduction of an integrity commissioner by March 1st, 2019, introduction of a code of conduct that not only applies to council but applies to committees as well. We also kind of wanted to outline that with keeping council committees, we also need staff support there. Not only a staff liaison, but somebody who does agendas, minutes, who will keep track of any written statements of disclosure for municipal conflict of interest, because with that we also have to do a registry and it has to be online. So we just wanted to make council aware of all the different requirements and staff support that it takes to support these committees and our committee structure. And another one I wanted to highlight was the AODA. under AODA, not only council needs to be trained in regards to customer service, but so does volunteers. And our committee members and public members on these committees, they would fall under the category of a volunteer. So there are special training that we have to provide to these volunteers to make them equipped to best suit for their committees. And I know that there was also questions at the August 1st meeting in regards to what boards and committees the council has established, who we appoint to them. And I know that there was a clarification in regards to like MVCA. That's not established here, so we just kind of outlined that in the report, that that's not something that we're dealing with. This is only council committees that council establishes. And also we highlighted that the original notice of motion from Councillor Coghlan was asked to do a review of boards. We're going to look at boards in 2019. We thought we would start with committees first. And if there's any other questions from council throughout the motions, we're here to address.
Okay, I guess we'll deal them as we go here. Oh. Yeah, please, Councillor McConkey.
Prior to maybe even moving forward here, it sounds like our bylaw needs to be updated to state what a committee now is, because you're saying that some of these we're making them all committees. Well, if we make them all committees, I'm a little reluctant to make them all committees here tonight with not knowing the definition of what a committee is and what I'm getting my member volunteers into. I don't have a definition.
Would you like to respond to that?
Through your worship to Councillor McConkey, committees are defined in the Municipal Act. The main, I think what you're kind of discussing is the changing of the working group definition in our procedure bylaw. We would amend the procedure bylaw to change the definition of a working group as to what we're proposing here in this report, and we can do that after committees have been either amended or dissolved or kept.
Madam Clerk?
And just to follow up on that as well, while a committee is defined in the Municipal Act, the work of that committee is defined through the terms of reference, which is defined through council. So at this point, we're just looking for council's wishes on continuing or dissolving certain committees. As far as the terms of reference, those will be coming with the most important ones first, and then the rest following through over the next few meetings to ensure that council establishes the committees exactly as they wish them to have, what authorities they wish them to have, what functions they will be performing. So that's the next step to this committee review.
Councillor McConkey?
Sorry, what I heard tonight is that a committee is accountable and can be taken to the ombudsman. Did I hear that correctly?
Through your worship to Councillor McConkey, when I made reference to the ombudsman, I made reference to a report in regards to the town of Deep River where they had an issue regarding going into closed session and establishing a working group. And I was just using that as an example of where we got our definition of a working group and why we're changing our definition, our procedure bylaw currently. So it has nothing to do in regards to we're changing the definition of our committees or our mandates. I just wanted to advise council as to why we're looking to amend what a working group is under our procedure bylaw.
Shall we start one by one? Okay. And maybe you want to, well, I'll introduce it. To dissolve the Agricultural Advisory Committee, so can I have a mover and second and get it on the table? Hannah and Coghlan. Discussion or comment on that? Councillor Hannah?
Thank you, Mayor French. I don't know who was on that committee. I didn't see it in the report. I guess from my observation was who was on that committee. I don't believe there was any meetings. And this council did pass a resolution or a policy that we're going to protect agricultural farmlands within Springwater. And I think if we're going to follow through on that, maybe we need to maintain this committee.
Madam Clerk?
Thank you. The Agricultural Advisory Committee was never fully formed. Members were sought, but the committee never actually came to be. So there was never any meetings, and that's the reason for the recommendation to dissolve.
I think I'd like to comment on that because I believe it is important to actually establish the Agriculture Advisory Committee, And I would say one of the reasons it didn't really meet is there was hope that we'd be down the road a little further with the official plan review, but we had a number of legislations come into play that started impacting, you know, our official plan review, and we know it's been pushed off a little bit because there was some hope that we'd actually have our review finished by the end of this term, which obviously is not going to happen. I think it's really important because no matter how you look at it, you know, probably about, you put green space and natural heritage and wetlands aside, probably 75% of our land mass in Springwater is agricultural. And I think they do need to provide input as we go further down the official plan review. And one of the problems is they have most of the land, but they have the lowest representation because of population. Less than 10% of our population are on the farming, and yet they represent 75% of the land mass. I really do think it is important to retain this committee and actually put it into play and get its terms of reference and choose the committee members, especially as we go into the next term, and we start dealing with the different aspects of the official plan review. So those are my comments, and with that, Councillor McConkey.
I agree that we need one. Agriculture is one of our biggest resource in Springwater. I think I see what Councillor Hanna is saying, that, you know, we had done protection of agricultural land, but what most importantly I think is that we need a voice of this sector, and we need to understand it, especially as we go through our official plan. And we've heard from them loud and clear on the green belt, and there's differences there. And I think as we go forward, this input that this advisory committee can have input into council when we do meet with ministers and different things as you go to the different functions. But I think moving forward, it's very important because I'm hearing from them about the green belt, and we have to hear from them. And I just think it wouldn't look good on this council to ignore that, as we know recreation is huge here too. We know agriculture is huge, and that's how this Springwater was really built. So I support it.
Actually, you mentioned something, Councillor McConkey, and I should have mentioned in my little kind of address, is the county feels it's important enough that they have one, because they're running into issues actually more with kind of design of road construction, because they're building roads that they can't take the farm equipment down because they put sharp curbs and they're puncturing tires. So, I mean, they've realized they've needed it, and even the MVCA, even though they disbanded all the other subcommittees, retained an agricultural advisory because they've recognized that most of our land mass is agricultural, and yet it's a small percentage of our population. So anyway, so we have it. So right now it's in the affirmative. In other words, if this resolution passes, it dissolves it. So for those in favor of dissolving it, I guess you'll say yay. I'll let our clerk now interject.
And just for clarification, because the committee is already established, if council votes this motion down, just by default, the committee would continue because it's currently established.
Yeah, no, we've established it. We just never got it rolling. And as I mentioned, because of obviously. Yeah, okay, yes. Deputy Mayor Allen.
Thanks, Mayor France. So the terms of reference were never established for this committee, is that correct?
No, there is a terms of reference. So actually, everything was put in place, I believe. CEO Brindley, do you want to address it?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to the Deputy Mayor. The terms of reference was created through the agricultural forums. It was hoped that we would get enough momentum to create the committee. It just hasn't, it just hasn't happened yet. The terms of reference are in place, we're ready to go, but I don't think the momentum has quite happened yet.
Okay, hearing that, so the motion reads, moved by Hannah, seconded by Colin, that council dissolve the Agricultural Advisory Committee. Those in favor of dissolving it? Opposed? Okay, so that motion fails. Thank you. so let's move on to the next one, the Budget Advisory Committee. Can I have a mover and a second to get it on the table? Deputy Mayor Allen, Councillor Coghlan. That council dissolve the Budget Advisory Committee. Comments? Those in favor? Carried. The next one is the council dissolve the Building Committee Administrative Center. Coghlan and McConkey? Not sure we need a lot of discussion on this, but any questions on that? All those in favor? Carried. And dissolve the General Committee. Can I have a mover and a seconder to get that on the table? Austin, Coghlan? Is there any questions on that? Councillor McConkey?
We called some of our meetings general committee. I thought it was you that wanted that.
I think we simply, actually, our clerk has now called any extra meetings, special council meetings, which seems to work really well for us. Okay, any other clarification? All those in favor? Carried. The Golf Committee. Can I have a mover and a seconder to dissolve it? Richie and Allen? Anybody want to speak to this one? Councillor Anna.
Thank you, Mayor French. I'm not sure how it'll be structured, but I just believe the committee for the golf needs to include staff and council. And those who maybe weren't around prior to this council, having members of council on the committee, since members of council have been on the committee, it has evolved into, I think, a much more professional event. Council has an opportunity, if you like, to go out and liaise with sponsors in a way that staff, I don't think, were able to, or maybe isn't appropriate, but council's been able to get sponsorships for new cars or trucks or vehicles for hole-in-ones and that type of thing, and I just believe that however it's structured, council and staff need to work together to run the golf committee.
Thank you. Any other comments on that? I guess, actually, in part of my report, if you read it, I think it was on the report there. My comment was I have no issue with eliminating the committee, but would suggest that it be recognized as an ad hoc committee, and maybe it has to be called a working group. I mean, I'll leave that to the clerks to decide what it should be, and they should be formed each year between the end of the Springwater Swing in the current year and put in place by January 31st of the new year for the next year's event. And of course, as usual, council would have final approval of costs and venue of future tournaments if that be their will. So as I said, I have no problem supporting the dissolving of it, but as Councillor Hannah's made some comments, I just think there should be recognized that there needs to be a mechanism to deal with the golf tournament. Madam Clerk?
Thank you. So with the revised and new definition of working group, members of council would not be able to sit on a working group. It would be only staff. As far as an ad hoc committee, so the 2018 Golf Committee was established only for that tournament. It's very clear in the motion that is just 2018. If council wishes to do an ad hoc, then every year they could pass a motion to establish a 2019 Golf Committee, 2020 Golf Committee. Some years, if they do not want to have involvement, they would just not have a motion that year. That's one way it could continue, and it would be considered an ad hoc and would dissolve automatically upon the completion of the tournament. So that is the other avenue that council could have. But the Golf Committee, as it stands right now, is automatically dissolved, as it was only established for 2018.
Good clarification. So with that in mind, all those in favor of dissolving? Carried. And next is the Performance Measurement Working Group. And again, dissolve the Performance Measurement Working Group. A mover and a seconder on this, please. Alan, Richie? The council dissolve the Performance Measurement Working Group. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Carried. And this one's dissolve the Planning and Development Advisory Committee. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that? Austin and Alan? Any comments on this? Because I have a comment. And again, similar to the agriculture, I do believe it's important to establish the Planning and Development Advisory Committee to provide a second sober thought as we move forward with the official plan review, as it may also assist to temper basically some of our political biases. But that way we can obviously have a number of kind of people from a variety of backgrounds kind of providing comment and input as we move forward. But again, it's the will of the council. That's my comment on it. Any other comments? Councilor McConkey?
I tend to agree because when we have had meetings and invite developers and everything, I know that we were at a meeting at Minising and I know that they were people were engaged in building spring water and stuff. So I think as we go through the official plan, the more recommendations in that you can keep people on board, and even having people from the new residents, like our Stonewood Manor being on this planning advisory, you'll learn from what they've gone through in a subdivision, and you learn from what you want to do better the next time. So there's not only just knowing what retail, the different industries want, it's also the people out there too. So with the official plan, I'd say yes, keep it going.
Any other comments? Councillor Coghlan?
Thank you, Mayor French. And just for clarification, when speaking to open houses and meetings held by the municipality inviting residents in, I'm to understand that that is not the Planning and Development Advisory Committee, and can we also confirm that it is, if it's in existence right now or if it's active?
Madam Deputy Clerk.
Through your worship to council, the Planning and Development Advisory Committee was actually established at the same time as the Agricultural Advisory Committee, and the terms of reference were approved, I think, in late 2016. Mm-hmm.
Follow-up?
And for clarification, it's separate from the open houses that are provided, and is there appointed members, and it's not an active committee?
Through your worship to Councillor Coghlan, similar to Agriculture Advisory, it's been established, but we've not appointed any members, and they do have a mandate, but we've never had any formal meetings.
Councillor Hanna?
Thank you. I apologize, I'm trouble following because I'm in the report and their committees are in a different order. So coming back to the agenda, the Planning Development Advisory Committee, and the next one is the council dissolve the planning committee. My question is, what's the difference between the two committees, and could they be maintained and combined into one?
Maybe I'll lead. If you recall, council at one time was the planning committee. Remember, we'd have separate planning meetings, but our clerk here obviously made things more efficient, and we have special council meetings to deal with planning matters. But we used to call it the planning committee, but it was members of council. So that's the next one. That's totally separate from the one that was proposed in new terms of reference, and no members and no meetings so far. So that's how they're different. Deputy Mayor Allen?
I guess I have concerns because it refers a lot to the official plan, and I'd be interested in Director Spagnell's thoughts on the potential value of this committee when we have definite steps in the official plan and we have public information sessions and input from the public at those. I'm wondering really what this committee would accomplish over and above those sorts of things for certainly the official plan and other types of involvement it might have in the planning process.
Director Spagnell?
Thank you, Mayor French, through you to Deputy Mayor Allen. So I guess the first thing is that the official plan process does allow for public input. It allows for a public process. It allows for roundtable discussions, things of that nature, to obtain comments from the general public. My understanding of the advisory committee is that it would provide for specific comments related to a group as it relates to official plan amendments or high-level documents, including the official plan review process. So in essence, it provides for an avenue for a group to comment on official plan amendments and the official plan review. And that's really the extent of what the Planning Advisory Committee would provide, in addition to, if we're talking to the official plan review process, in addition to the comments that are received from the general public through the rollout of the official plan review and update process.
Follow up?
Well, would you not say, Director Spagnell, that this sort of input would be quite possible through public meetings that were held at the appropriate times?
Director Spagnell?
Thank you, Mayor French, through you to Deputy Mayor Allen. You could receive the comments through the public process, through the official plan review. What the advisory committee was intended to do, in the terms of reference was intended to do, from my recollection, was to provide for a more quaint opportunity for discussion of that group. But I agree that you could receive the same comments, it just might be in a setting that might be less formal than when you have public open houses and things of that nature.
Councillor Hanna?
Thank you, Mayor French. It sounds like a value add to me, and I would think with all the development we have coming forward that maybe we should be definitely keeping this.
Madam Clerk?
Thank you. Just as a point of information that might help make some of these decisions easier, when you're looking at a committee of council, the definition under the Municipal Act is that 50% of the members need to be members of council. So when you're looking at that, the committees that would have members of the public, it would be very limited members of the public. So you're looking at 2 or 3, maybe 4 members of the public total. So when you're looking at an oversight of some kind, there's not that much public input when your number of residents or members of the public are so small.
Councillor McConkey?
So, you're saying that a committee now has to have 50% of council?
Madam Clerk?
That's the definition under the Municipal Act. There are certain exemptions to that, such as Heritage, Committee of Adjustment. There are specific ones, but the majority of advisory committees to council require 50% composition of members of council.
So, if you change this from saying, to say committee rather than advisory, can we don't need 50% of council? Because most of the committees that we are on today, there is not 50% of council. And to put 50% of council and all of the meetings that they're attending, and that would be very difficult. I would be deleting some of this. So it comes back to my first point. What's the definition? What have we changed about the committee? Because I never heard that a committee has to be 50%. And so, like, even with the Trails Committee, I think myself and Councillor Austin were going to be the only ones on it. So there is a big an impact here in understanding what we're getting into and when we're voting for these.
Madam Clerk?
Yes, thank you. So it's not 50% of council, it's the committee has to have, its members is 50% of its composition is members of council.
You either reduce the committee so that it's not as many of councillors. You know what I mean? Like, it all plays with numbers, but there's a 50%.
And that's what we're doing through this committee review.
Well, I don't know why does staff think that they should be, and what was the other name we have? We had groups, working groups. I believe, what's the other term? You're going to have committee for council members and you're going to have another one for staff. Why did you make that differentiate? Through Mayor.
There might be internal projects that a certain director or whatnot creates a working group, but that would be based on a project that has either been directed down from council or through the budget, whatnot. But as far as the reasoning for the differences, it's through different reports from the Ombudsman's office that we're learning as the years go on. The Ombudsman's office is investigating certain municipalities over certain complaints, and we're finding a bit more on what they're expecting of committees. There was also some changes in the Municipal Act within the last couple of years that have forced some of these changes to come down as well. So the update of the definition to a meeting of saying that it's laying the groundwork of council. So that's where we need to make these little changes to make sure that we're conforming to the legislation.
Councillor Austin?
Yeah, I think the clerk just pointed it out, because in our report, it says, under Section 238 of the Municipal Act, at least 50% of the members are also members of one or more councils or local boards. So I think it wasn't staff that made this recommendation, it was a requirement of the Municipal Act updated.
Yeah, I think there's two issues here. The one issue is we're trying to decide what committees we should keep and not keep. And then I think at some point, we're really going to have to get down to the nitty gritty. How are these even committees going to be formed going forward because of changes in the municipal act? So I think right now, we're at least trying to get a list of committees and the ones that, I think that's all we're trying to do tonight. And unfortunately, we're doing it during the transition of new regulations, which does not make it easy. So we've had enough discussion, so, as far as I'm concerned. And so it was moved by Austin, second by Alan, that we dissolve the Planning and Development Advisory Committee. So those in favor of dissolving? Opposed? That is carried. Oh, it's tied, oh.
Terry wasn't back.
Okay, so it fails. So, yeah. So it's carried. Yeah. Guess I better count. Sorry about that. I think the next one would be easier, that council dissolve the planning committee. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Austin and Allen? Any, Councillor Coghlan?
Through you, Mayor French, I just have a procedural question. Understanding that a member of council has stepped out for a moment and we are trying to get through these and see what the will of council is there an opportunity to revisit or reconsider that motion once all of council is here? Because I do think that the point of tonight is to leave staff with exactly, if, I don't want staff spending time developing and planning advisory committee terms of reference and going through it all to find out this, we just turn it down anyway.
No, but the reality is, I mean, if councillor wants to excuse himself and there's something important on the agenda,
Okay.
I think we need to carry on business.
Thank you.
Or we'll be revisiting, a number of things. So right now, we're talking about dissolving the planning committee. Any questions on that? All those in favor? Carried. The council keep the building committee, Fire Station 2 as a council committee, and mover and a seconder, Coghlan and Hannah. And since it's not done, it's probably not a bad idea. Any comments on keeping that committee? All those in favor? Carried. And this is kind of interesting. Do we have any choice on the Committee of Adjustment? Madam Clerk?
Thank you. So council does have to have a committee of adjustment, but if there is no appointed committee of adjustment, council sits as committee of adjustment.
Okay, thank you. So a mover and a seconder to keep the Committee of Adjustment, Hannah and Alan. The council keep the Committee of Adjustment as a council committee. All those in favor? Carried. And that council keep the Joint Compliance Audit Committee as council committee. And do you want to speak to this before, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. So this is just for procedural purposes. Please know that you have to have a compliance audit committee. This will be coming on later in the agenda, as you'll see, for appointment of members, but just as a wholesome full committee review, we wanted to make sure we included this information and have this just as a procedural matter.
Can I have a mover and a seconder for that? Austin and Coghlan? Any questions of the clerk on this one? Seeing none, Councillor Austin?
Oh, it's not an advisory committee, is it? Okay, so it doesn't need to have, 50% of its members don't have to be council? No, okay,
Madam
that's
Clerk?
correct.
Yes, that's correct. So certain, as mentioned, certain committees have certain legislative requirements, just like this committee of adjustment. There are a few very, very specific committees that can go away from that.
All those in favor? Carried. And that the council keep the Economic Development Working Group as a council committee. I have a mover and a seconder, Austin and McConkey. Any questions on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. And next on the council, keep the Finance and Audit Committee as a council committee. A mover and a seconder. Alan Coghlan, any comments on this? Councilor Hannah.
Thank you, Mayor. I have mixed feelings about this one here. I always go back to my statements that I make under the Municipal Act that states that council is responsible for the finances of the municipality and that authority cannot be delegated. This committee, which right now is myself and the deputy mayor, staff have to prepare all the reports, prepare them. We go through them, we discuss them, then they come to council. So my feeling is that council doesn't always go through all the information that we receive, so council, in effect, has deferred their responsibilities to two members of this council. And so I'm not comfortable with keeping this committee. If it does stay and council wants to keep it, not everybody around this table is going to be around next council anyway, so it's just up to the rest of the council. But I just think the council needs to be responsible for finances, and this committee does not do that.
Did you want to comment first, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. So legislatively speaking, council, you're correct, cannot delegate that. As far as this committee, what its structure, as an example, earlier today, there was a Finance and Audit Committee. The next meeting of council, within the next 2 meetings of council, all of the reports, all of the recommendations will be coming to council, and council has to approve that and review all of the reports. So council doesn't actually delegate any of their financial obligations to a committee because they wouldn't be able to at that point. This is just kind of a first review of the finances and more in-depth. It is open to the public, so any members of council are more than welcome, as well as the public, to attend these meetings.
Follow up, Councilor Hannah?
Thank you, and I appreciate that. I understand that is the case, but again, I don't remember anybody else being showing up at these meetings except the mayor. And it's just a repeat of the efforts by staff. If we're going to do it once, do it in front of council. That's all I have to say.
Deputy Mayor Allen?
I disagree with some of that assessment. This committee came in at the beginning of this term, and working with, there have been 2 council members on it, and a member of the public. The member of the public moved away and resigned. The committee has worked on numerous projects with Director Schmidt, and I believe Director Schmidt has found value in the input and discussion that has happened in the committee. I think council, once it's come to council, there hasn't been the need for, there's been confidence in the council, the majority of council, that the review done by this committee has been constructive, valuable, and produced results that have given council comfort to review the material, but not review it necessarily in all areas in as much depth. I refer to the long-range financial plan, the annual audit process and financial statements, the interim financial statements. So this committee has performed good function. If Councillor Hannah or anybody else feels it's not worthwhile, it's always open for them to resign from the committee if they're not getting results personally from it. But I think the committee is very vital to stay.
Since we kind of turned to the Director of Planning on the Planning Committee, maybe we can just turn to Director Schmidt on whether, you know, the value that he receives out of this committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think, you know, at the end of the day, I think the committee does provide value to the township and to its residents. I think to follow up on the Deputy Mayor's comments about, you know, the in-depth analysis that does happen at this committee level, I think is valuable. And again, it is open to any member of, not just council, but to member of the public to attend these meetings. Whether they choose to or not is totally up to them. But I think there has been value in this committee, and I think on a go-forward basis, I think it would continue to provide value. We do have, or we've completed the long-range financial plan, and I think that definitely assisted, as well as keep in mind if and when the Midhurst EA is completed and we find out where we're moving with that, there will be much more financial analysis and in-depth analysis that's going to be required, and updating of the long-range financial plan and the model and so on and so forth, which will come to this committee. In addition to the policies that were recommended through the long-range financial plan, those policies will need to come through this committee as well as a first glance, and then on to council for final approval. So again, this committee doesn't provide final approval. It essentially is the first set of eyes on the financials, and to the extent that this committee sees that there's some challenges or things that council as a whole needs to be aware of, then this committee provides for that type of avenue, so.
I guess my only comment on it is that, I had mixed kind of emotions on it. I believe finance and audit committees are valuable. And I think it is important, as Director Schmidt mentioned, kind of reviewing financial statements and auditors and that. Council is definitely not delegating any authority to them. They're supposed to kind of sort out and maybe clarify, make it easier for us to understand when it comes to council for approval, and hopefully we have some comfort level in the members on the committee, providing kind of wholesome input. And I guess my only disappointment is that I know when we went into it, because I've sat in a number of meetings, that my expectations were something a little more concrete aside from just reviewing materials, and that was really to kind of come forward. And I know the EA's taking a long time, but I did expect to by now see kind of revised long-term financial plan that we could be digesting. And the other thing was, we talked early in the term about some policies on debt financing, same as Barry has implemented, kind of bylaws saying their debt financing will not exceed 10% of direct revenues, where, right now basically the municipal act or the government or planning act, I guess, allows 25%. And I don't think we care to get our township into that particular case. So I see value in it, and so I will definitely support, and hopefully maybe it'll become kind of, instead of a kind of responsive, become, more proactive in kind of in the future. So any other questions or comments on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Opposed? I didn't see your hand up either way. No. Okay, the next one is the Fire Master Plan Committee. As a council member, that we're keeping it because we continually update it. Mover and a seconder. Ritchie and Coughlin. Any questions or comments on this? All those in favor? Carried. And the council keep the fleet working group as a council committee. Mover and a seconder, Austin and Ritchie. Comments or question, or Madam Clerk?
Just as a note that if this is to continue, the name would be changed to remove working group. It would be an advisory committee.
Thank you. Yeah, we're in the fleet, but, and we should just mention it's going to change the committee, but we're going to keep it. No, we are. Yeah. No, it's just that the name is going to change. Yes. Any other questions? All those in favor? Carried. And Heritage Committee, that would keep the Heritage Committee. A mover and a seconder. Councillor McConkey, Councillor Coughlin. I don't think we need a lot of discussion on this. All those in favor? Carried. And the committee keep the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee as a council committee. Now, I guess I just have a question before we table this, and maybe the clerk can clarify, because right now it's joint with the county. So, but we have to have it formed as our council committee also. Maybe clarify, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. So under legislation, we are mandated to have an accessibility committee, and this just makes it easier on everybody to have a joint committee. That's one of the allowances that we're allowed to have. So it's with the county, and another member municipality has just joined this year as we've updated the terms of reference. So this terms of reference, council's just approved them within the last 6 months. So this is one of the ones you'll see that is under council's mandate, but the county has a bit of say in it as well, so it won't mimic exactly how the rest of our terms of reference will look.
Thank you for that clarification. I have a mover and a seconder for that. Austin and Coghlan. That council keep the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee as a council committee. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, that council keep the Recreation Advisory Committee as a council committee. Mover and a seconder. Coghlan. Austin. And comments, questions? Oh, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. So just I wanted to have a bit of a preamble before the conversation starts. We understand that the Recreation Advisory Committee terms of reference needs to be updated. So there are a few, staff have been talking about a few different options. One of the options being that a member of, that each hall board or recreation association have a representative on RAC. At this point, we're looking to see if council wishes to continue with RAC, and at a future time, we will have a wholesome discussion regarding the terms of reference, the composition, and how that committee will actually look. So at this point, the main part of the discussion is to see whether council still wants to continue with RAC, and then the bits and details will happen at a subsequent meeting within the next couple of meetings.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Austin.
I still want to bring up the point, though, if this is a Recreation Advisory Committee, if it's an advisory committee, then you would, and if you wanted to have a representative from each hall board, then it would require more than four or more council members, which is a quorum, and I don't think that's doable.
Madam Clerk.
Thank you. So how that happens is the 50% is of members of council or boards. The whole, the recreation associations are boards, so they count towards that 50%.
Councillor Anna.
Thank you, Mayor French. I agree that the structure of the committee needs to be revised, no doubt. The members of the Recreation Advisory Committee are generally, other than council, are generally people in our township that organize and run sports leagues. They're responsible for running teams, they take on that job and so on. Then they're asked to come to meetings and make decisions about things to do with recreation, like the cost of renting the arena, ball diamonds. They're asked to look at descriptions, if you like, of sports equipment, not sports equipment, but playground equipment, and make decisions on playground equipment, the cost of playground equipment, replacing playground equipment. They're being asked when somebody wants, they're being asked when people come forward and want to do projects like a pavilion. They were asked, the Clerk Daly at the time said to make a deputation to council, but then the committee was, or the people that came forward were asked then to go and make a deputation before the RAC committee, which is just other citizens of this township. They're not elected officials. They're not in a position to be the ones that are making decisions. This council is the one to make decisions, and I'm just saying that RAC has been asked to do jobs and responsibilities that I believe they shouldn't be. It should be responsibilities and jobs of council. When somebody wants to rent a hall board or rent a hall, or the fees for a hall, or whether they want exceptions, again, they're being asked to go to RAC. That's, in my view, not a position that people who are running sports leagues should be doing. They should be allowed to do what they have to do. The decisions that they're being asked to do, the structure is definitely wrong, and that's what has to be revised. If we're going to keep this committee, I would suggest that it should be, as being suggested, a representative from each hall board, and let the sports teams and the people that run them do their job.
Madam Clerk, you were going to comment on?
Yes, thank you. And that can be part of the discussion during the terms of reference. Staff will be bringing forward a variety of different options when we present the terms of reference for council to debate and decide how they want the exact committee structured. Council can have it so that it's strictly an advisory committee that has no authority to make any decisions, or they can provide them with a bit of delegated authority regarding rental rates, whatnot. There's also to keep in mind is the code of conduct that will be mandated as of March 1st committee members will be required to comply with that. As part of that is conflict of interest. So members of a committee are required to declare conflict of interest in the event that they do have one. So there are those provisions. These committee members will be trained to that once it's established by council of the next term. And that'll come into play when you're speaking of maybe sports organizations that are approving or voting on reduction of rental rates. That's where the terms of reference and proper training can come into play for that.
Deputy Mayor Allen?
We heard from Director Spagnell on planning, Director Schmidt on finance. I'd like to hear from Director Belcour on his thoughts with respect to RAC.
Director Belcour.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to council. I'd like to clarify one point is the members of the committee apply to be on the committee. They're appointed by the mayor and council to the committee after reviewing the applications. A few of them are involved with sports groups, but all in all, they have a wide variety and wide range and background in recreation, from the teaching aspect to one is an administrator in another municipality, etc. So there is that. And I believe their current authority is to make recommendations to council only. They have no delegated authority to make a final decision. So those things will have to be kept in mind with the new terms of reference. At times I have commented that it's a make-work committee for myself, or seemed like it. But at the end of the day, I do see value in having people close to the community, with their feet on the ground, that hear the wants and needs of the community, to provide input into the future planning and recreation. I do seek their input when preparing budgets to hear what they're hearing from the people. And because most of them are professionals in the recreation field, not all, I do seek their advice occasionally on different projects and aspects. Again, I think we do need to revamp the structure of the committee, as has been suggested, but I do see value in keeping it and in moving forward.
Follow up.
Thank you, Mayor. I see this therefore as analogous to the argument for the Planning and Development Advisory Committee, where you have members from the community recreation associations who have valuable input and examples and feedback from their residents that in their communities that could provide valuable input to this committee, just as the example was in the planning and development, how people could provide input in planning and development. So I will support maintaining this.
Councillor McConkey.
I just have one question through the mayor to Ron, does the recreation advisory, like it sort of started off that, you know, you were looking at the equipment and stuff in the different areas, and I know that we've changed a lot with our council structure. We've taken overhauls, and I know that maybe some things went to the Recreation Advisory Committee that shouldn't have, like with the, I'll use the example of rental of a hall, you know, permission, whether they have to pay a certain amount. I think that when someone comes forward, I can use the example, the Elmville BIA asked for, you know, permission to use the hall, and they might have asked for free of charge, but they were willing to pay cleaning and stuff like that. So I think that we need ourselves some standards and some policies that also help this committee. And we also, like do we have something that really says each playground will be replaced in 20 years? Do we have like a list of things that and we give everything a life cycle. And do we look at that life cycle? Like, I know in Barrie, it was very easy for a counselor to say, someone was saying to the counselor, I need a new park and such and such. Their policy is that every 20 years, we look at that park for replacement. So I just wondered, have we developed these standards? Do we have that? Or is that something that this committee would do, or our rec team?
Director Belcourt, would you like to comment or respond to that?
Thank you, Worship. Through to Councilor McConkey. At this point, we do not have a set standard. We have had a program in place, probably dating back to just after amalgamation, where many of the playground units were, for example, were old and outdated, do not meet current CSA guidelines. We still use the current CSA guideline as the benchmark to work towards. Not only that, now we have to incorporate the accessibility requirements, because all playgrounds as of 2016 have to meet, any new playgrounds or upgrades have to meet the AAODA standards. So again, like this committee, they were looking at it, and some of them have professional backgrounds in it, and we provide them with that standard. But to say if we are working towards that, and that's going to be done through our asset management plan in developing that inventory and the standard and the life cycle costing of equipment.
I agree with the committee. I just think that we've evolved and changed the way recreation is, and the committee just has to change with how we've changed too.
Councillor Coghlan?
Thank you, Mayor French, and I have quite a lot to say about this, but as the clerk had mentioned, that we are simply approving tonight whether we'd like to keep it and move on, and we'll have an opportunity at a later date.
No, and with that, I have very few comments then, because they've already been touched on. The RAC, I always thought, should include the kind of recreation association, and it looks like we're moving in that direction. And Director Belcourt said, they really weren't a delegated authority. It appears that they may have taken some of that on, and maybe that's our fault. And so, quite honestly, if those things are dealt with, I'm quite pleased to kind of retain this committee, because I agree with Deputy Mayor Allen. It's probably as important and will contribute as much as the Planning and Development Advisory Committee. Councillor Coghlan.
Thank you, Mayor French, and just further to that, as we move forward, and I'm hearing tonight about amalgamating the hall boards and having someone appointed to RAC, that's not something that I support, and that would be a conversation at a different time, is what you're suggesting, but that it would still remain with the terms of reference today.
Right. No, and we'll have a separate discussion, and as I said, we're kind of throwing our 2 cents worth in, and we'll have that healthy debate at whatever time that may be. So with that in mind, all those in favor of keeping the REC Advisory Committee? Thank you. Carried. Madam Clerk? I thought you were reaching for the microphone. Okay, this one here is to amalgamate the Community Assistant Program Advisory Committee and the International Competition Grant Committee into a newly established Grants Advisory Committee. Can I have a mover and a second to get this on the table? Austin and Richie. Any questions on this? Pretty straightforward. Councillor Hanna.
Would the final decision be a decision of council, or would it be made by the committee?
Madam Clerk.
Thank you. So the current terms of reference would be used to be brought for, to bring forward the new terms of reference. At this time, we haven't looked that much into it, but it would be something similar to how the community assistance program is established today.
Any other questions? All those in favor? Carried. And this one is the council amalgamate the Trails Working Group into the Recreation Advisory Committee. Mover and a seconder for this. McConkey and Allen. Any discussion? Councilor McConkey.
I do not support amalgamation. I think the Recreation Advisory Committee has been given enough authority. I don't believe that there has been a lot of work done on the trails in the way that it should be highlighted for Springwater. I believe that the Trails Committee should be a separate committee and be well supported by this council for the next term of council. Trails is what makes Springwater a special place, and we'll keep it rural. And if we don't start, it's as important to us as the agricultural is. So I feel that it needs its own committee, and we have to put our heels in. If we want to support our trails, then make it a committee, because the recreation committee, if you put all of those members on and the different tasks that they'll be assigned, I don't think that we can do it justice.
I'll turn to the clerk. Could this, since we've already basically retained and keeping the recreation advisory, could this have could be amended to the council? Because right now, do we have the Trails Working Group? So could we have a resolution keeping the Trails Working Group? Madam Clerk.
In essence, if this motion would be turned down, it would revert to the Trails Working Group, which would be renamed, because it wouldn't be a working group, but it is an established committee. It just never it never really took off. So if this motion is defeated, the Trails Committee would stay as a standalone.
Thank you for that guidance. In other words, if this is defeated, obviously it doesn't impact the Recreation Advisory Committee because we've already retained that. It simply means that we're not going to amalgamate this group into that. And if it is lost, basically the Trails Working Group remains the way it is at the present time. Councillor McConkey.
Just to this council, as we know, recreation is becoming a forefront in budgets, and we know that our director is quite full with project management and that. So like by creating these committees, and like I can see why the director said, you know, he questions the committee. Again, putting him on this committee and the other committee is just creating a lot of workload, which I totally understand. But I do feel as a council we have to move towards other staff and that helping on these committees so that our director can deal with the project management of the projects.
So I think, is everyone clear here what will happen if it carries and if it's lost? All those in favor? 1, 2. Opposed? Okay, that motion is lost. Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Mayor French. Before we move off 9.6, my question is directed to the clerk. I had made the suggestion that we create a new committee, Cultural Activities Advisory Committee. Would that be discussed now or at another time?
Madam Clerk.
As we're on the topic, this would be the time. Staff put recommendations to the current committees. If council wants the creation of new committees, this would be the time where you would put that on the table.
I would like to do that then, and my recommendation is that council establish a Cultural Activities Advisory Committee or Cultural Advisory Committee. Probably activities in there.
Maybe while we're writing this out, can you expand on what this committee might do without kind of getting down to the nitty-gritty of terms of reference?
I'm thinking of it being sort of breaking ground and just brainstorming how we might develop more cultural activities or offerings within the township. So it would be beginning with kind of a brainstorming activity. That's about all I can think of saying.
Okay, actually, so we have some healthy discussion, we have a mover. Austin, do we have a seconder for this? Yeah, Councillor McConkey. Okay, Councillor McConkey.
What I see for the cultural plan is that we do have a cultural master plan, which is sitting there that has been paid a lot of money, and it has gone through ideas. It has had work groups giving input, and everyone so we have a cultural plan. It's just how do we implement it? So I think that this group would look at the implementation of a cultural plan, of our cultural plan. And I think that they should work closely with the other groups, because you have the economic development is based on that, the trails is based on that, recreation's based on that. So it touches many, so I don't know if it's an amalgamation with another group or whether it's a complete committee. But I think to start, probably a committee that can review them all and see how everything links.
No, I think that's a very valid point. I forgot about that, since we do have that kind of base plan. It could be the foundation of whatever it might do, so there is a starting point. Any other discussion on this? Councillor Coghlan? Okay, no questions. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, now we're moving on to 9.7. Thank you for all that input. I think it was very, very good. We had good discussion, and so we'll move forward on that. Can we have a 5-minute comfort break? Reconvene the meeting. Okay, we're now at kind of 9.7. And I need a mover and a second to get this on the table. Let's read consolidated fees and charges bylaw. Can I have a mover seconder? Hannah and Coughlin. The report from the Deputy CAO Director of Finance regarding the draft consolidated fees and charges bylaw, along with supporting schedules, dated September 5th, 2018, be received, and that the new consolidated fees and charges bylaw be presented for consideration at the September 19th, 2018 meeting of council. So do we have questions of our director since he's here? Seeing none? All those in favor? Carried. That went better than expected, right, Director Schmidt? Okay, 9.8, frivolous and vexatious litigation. Can I have a mover and a seconder for this? Richie and Hannah. Okay. I'm glad you took your bio break because it's a long read here. That the report from the Chief Administrative Officer regarding frivolous and vexatious lawsuits, joint and several liability dated September 5th, 2018 be received. That Springwater instruct its legal counsel to seek costs against individuals and law firms carrying out frivolous and vexatious lawsuits against the municipality to the highest extent reasonably possible, and that Springwater seek to charge back administrative costs to individuals and law firms carrying out frivolous and vexatious lawsuits against the municipality whenever reasonable, wherever reasonably possible, and that Springwater file complaint to the Law Society of Ontario against solicitors that name Springwater in claims legal action that are frivolous and vexatious, and that with the knowledge that the province will not amend joint and several liability, Springwater requests AMO to advocate for changes in Ontario Negligence Act, and that a letter be sent to AMO requesting that AMO advocate for changes in legislation that require full compensation for municipalities subject to frivolous and vexatious lawsuits. The Law Society of Ontario expand their rules to make it unethical for lawyers to name innocent parties in statements of claim before the courts. Compensation of catastrophic injuries caused by individuals to themselves not be paid for on the backs of municipalities. If the province wants to compensate people that injure themselves, the province needs to create a separate catastrophic injury fund that is not paid for by municipalities. So questions? I'll start with Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mayor French. I read this over, and anyways, I might be a little forgetful, but to CO Brindley, what's other municipalities doing in regards to this? That's something I'd like to know.
CO Brindley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Councillor Ritchie. I know that there's a significant amount of frustration out there because I've seen it at AMO, but I think we're the first municipality, at least I know definitely in Simcoe County, that's actually starting to try to take a hard line on this issue. I brought this up to the attention because the CAOs in Simcoe County meet on a regular basis, and their response to me is, we agree with you, but good luck. So I think we're one of the first ones out the gate to try to deal with this issue aggressively.
Deputy Mayor, follow up first, Councillor Ritchie.
Yes, and my second question is, what constitutes frivolous and vexatious? I want people to speak their minds, but yet I realize that there's a line there, but maybe this is more in regards of with law firms than people individually, that's why I'm curious to know what triggers this and who's the people that do that makes this work happen.
CO Brindley, maybe you can give an example of what happens in some lawsuits.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Ritchie. Starting with the definition of frivolous and vexatious, meaning claims that are considered to be a waste of time without merit or an abuse of the court's process. We'll start with that. And I'll give you an example. You may recall in the late spring late winter, early spring, where there was a bus accident in Stayner, actually the other side of Stayner, where an accident was there and a number of people were injured. We actually have 4 claims against the Township of Springwater related to that accident. This is systemic, where lawyers are using a shotgun approach to sue anyone and everyone in order to protect the interests of their client, but at the same time, they're costing our taxpayers money, not just by the fact that we have deductibles on claims, but staff time, a considerable amount of staff time is taken to at least start to process these things. Often we have to go through court to a certain extent before we are released from these claims, but the problem is you'll even see the statement of claim example which says there was an accident on Highway 26. But then we are sued and we claim right away, we make it known, no, this is a provincial highway, it's not our responsibility. But they still sue us because your firms, and I'm sorry to the audience, firms like Diamond and Diamond, one of them, they're actually suing us for an accident that happened in Brock Township, which is the other side of the GTA. We're going through a claims process with, that's one of them. As an update, I looked at our records today because we just received 2 more claims in the last few weeks. We have 13 claims against us in total in 2018, and none of them involve liability to the township. They are all either in Brock Township, they're in Clearview, they're on provincial highways or county roads. None of these lawsuits are of the responsibility of the township, and yet we are paying the price from an administrative side as well as from a legal side to process this work.
Deputy Mayor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor French. I certainly support this. This is a no-brainer to support, I believe. And as I stated in my summary in the AMO conference, this is an annual theme topic that comes up, and it came up again this year with Attorney General Mulroney, the question, and she did seem sincere when she said she is looking at the history, the briefings, the delegations, and will be coming out with something in this within the next 6 months, which is a better response than we got from the previous government in this. So I'm interested when you say, though, that the other municipalities said good luck. It certainly would help if there was some grouping of the other municipalities. The good luck suggests there's not a chance against the government, but there will be much less of a chance if there isn't some consolidation of voice here. So can you expand a little bit on why they wouldn't be looking at the similar type of motion?
CEO Brindley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through the Deputy Mayor. I don't doubt once we start this formal work, hopefully I can get them on board. But until now, they sympathize with the cause, but it's also what are their priorities right now. They may have other priorities in their community that they're focusing their time on. Right now, in light of the fact that the current legislation essentially is against municipalities on this, they're essentially waiting for the province to do something which maybe with this new government might happen, but it has not been happening under the previous government.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if you were accompanying me, CEO Brindley, but we did actually do a delegation early on in the term, and we actually met with the then Minister Milou, and we kind of went through the chapter verse of why this was unfair, and I think her final statement was, well, somebody has to pay. That was her position. So I think it's very appropriate. And maybe one of the things we do want to add into this is that this be shared or distributed to AMO, other municipalities or whatever. Councillor McConkey?
It's just that the comment that with the knowledge that the province will not amend joint and several liability, Springwater request AMO. The province to me is our hierarchy, and if the province, if we're putting right in writing that they're not going to amend it, then the province isn't going to help us fight our fight. So how much is this actually by doing this? Yes, I know we're going to save staff time, but are we going to be spending a lot more in legal, and is that why the other municipalities aren't jumping on board? Like, I would rather see that we're taking this to the province and AMO, not excluding that the province will not amend, changing that to say that, you know, Springwater requests AMO and the province to advocate for changes. So I think, because if we state that they're not going to, and then we just do what the province, that we don't think the province is going to do, I'm just afraid it's going to cost us more money than.
Actually, I have a suggestion, and if anybody wants to pick up on it, because I think that's a valid point. And maybe the best way of, is to kind of remove that recognition that the province aren't doing their job. And maybe remove that phrase that with the knowledge that the province will not amend joint and several liability. Maybe we should just delete that and go right to, previous paragraph, frivolous and vexatious, and Springwater request AMO to advocate for changes in the Ontario Negligence Act, that a letter be sent to AMO requesting. And that way it would take out the negative connotation and would kind of leave the province out of it and actually send the strong message. That might work anyway, if they want to propose, someone wants to propose an amendment. Councillor Ritchie?
What's the chances of bringing this up at county and seeing where the county stands on this and the other municipalities to see if we couldn't get some traction there? Because obviously, Robert's brought it up with the other COs, but why shouldn't we be bringing this up at the county level? Maybe something could happen there.
Actually, I know the county, early in the term, around the same time as we did the delegation, they also did a delegation from the county, because they have the same problem. They get included in lawsuits that have nothing to do with Simcoe County. All the time. Yeah, so, but I think it's a valid point. Councillor McConkey.
Okay, but still to my question is by us seeking for frivolous and vexation litigation, is that going to cost us a lot more now? Because we've got a lot of suits. Yes, it's going to save staff time, but what's it going to cost us legal time, especially if we haven't reached an agreement with AMO and we haven't got the other municipalities the support of? Are we going to be the only ones saying, oh no, that's frivolous and vexatious, and we're fighting that? Like, we might not go anywhere. We'll be spending a lot of money on a lawyer here that...
Senator Brindley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Councilor McConkey. We're not actually proposing to spend any money here. I'm just seeking council permission that actually, as part of our lawsuits, which we're doing anyways, which we're already paying for, that we actually cross-claim, so that we're already in the lawsuit anyways. So I'm just asking permission, just clarification from council, that we start to be hard in those processes against these people and actually instruct our lawyer to cross-claim. And at the same time, this bylaw proposed costs, and this is a unique thing our lawyer didn't think of when looking at this. We're actually assigning costs now, because one of our concerns when reading the report is we'll get to a point where the judge will say, yes, Springwater, you're not liable for this, so you accept your charges, my client will accept our charges, and everyone walks away. What I'm saying here is no, not anymore. We want our money back. You've dragged us through a process where at the beginning of the process we told you you're wrong, and now we want our money back. There's nothing in here that actually will cost us any additional money. A matter of fact, and maybe as you've been pointing out, by bringing it to AMO's point of view, and we can add to this that it also be sent to the county and other people, we're getting all of AMO, all the municipalities in Ontario behind us. And that's what I'm trying to do through this, is get every municipality, the 400 plus municipalities in Ontario, behind us in this same fight.
Yep. Okay, so now I don't want to kind of switch things. So Richie and Hannah, could they modify that and agree to it? Madam Clerk, just effectively just take out this phrase. So basically, just so everybody knows, it's exactly the long wording I read, except I'll pick it up the paragraph before and then complete. The Springwater filed complaints to the Law Society of Ontario against solicitors that name Springwater and claims legal actions that are frivolous and vexatious, and Springwater requests AMO to advocate for changes in Ontario Negligence Act, and that a letter be sent to AMO requesting that, et cetera, et cetera. So we're just taking out that with the knowledge, we're just ignoring the fact that the province is doing that. Councillor Austin?
And will you also be adding what was suggested about sending this out to other county municipalities? Or yeah, will you be adding that to the motion?
Yes, I think Madam Clerk is going to put some wording in that it'll be distributed And maybe for some guidance here, would be best we distribute it to all municipalities in Simcoe County and AMO. Would that be the best way of doing it, possibly? Maybe CEO Brindley, you want to give us some guidance?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think, you know, if you say AMO and Simcoe County, by sending it to AMO, it will go to every other municipality?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so,
Is Lynn Dolan still president of AMO?
No, I think her term just ended at this AMO. The amendment will read that the motion now before council be amended as follows. Delete with the knowledge that the province will not amend joint several liability, and add that this motion be distributed to all Simcoe County municipalities. Maybe we should just to Simcoe County, or the county of Simcoe and AMO. Would that be a better way of doing it? Or either way? Doesn't matter, okay. I'll leave it the wording, that way she doesn't have to rewrite it. To all Simcoe County municipalities and AMO. So can I have a mover and seconder for that? Allen and McConkey? So that's the amendment. All those in favor? Carried. And now we'll go back to the main motion, Richie and Hannah, which will be the motion as amended, including that, those changes. Is that clear? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, 9.9, Springwater Swing Golf Rotation. And the resolution that report from the Chief Administrative Officer regarding Springwater Swing Golf Course Rotation, item consideration dated September 5th, 2018 be received. Council approves the Springwater Swing Golf Tournament Policy. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Coghlan and Allen. Questions, comments? Councillor McConkey.
I have issues with this. Not that I don't want to see it at the 4 different golf courses, but just making this recommendation. What if something, the price is too high at one? What if the next mayor wants it, like Wasaga Beach does it at one golf course or whatever, they don't switch around? What if the next council wants it at one? I just think that we shouldn't be putting out there and saying, hey, we're going to do this year, next year. That person can charge you whatever, and now you've got a policy holding you to this. So unless the policy is flexible based on pricing, like if something is overpriced and we can't afford it, we're not going to go there. So I just want to know how that's going to be handled.
Okay, CEO Brindley.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Councilor McConkey. Sorry, for some reason my computer's not bringing this up. You have a very good point, and if the council would like, I can add something to the policy that talks about the discretion of council to have it at another facility or look at price. Because you're right, if this was sort of something that certain courses might think is, hey, you know, it's going to be here and we're going to charge. Definitely I could, with the direction of council, amend the policy to have an additional line that deals with the ability to change courses should the terms, I'm trying to find wording quickly. Yeah, so yeah, if the terms are unacceptable, we can look at another course. And I can see that wasn't thought of. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we could do that. No, very good. Thanks.
Councillor Coghlan.
And thank you, and through you, Mayor French, to CEO Brindley. Part of the reason for this is that at the last time when we did go to, I'm going to say, tender to find the best price the point of the golf tournament is to raise money for our community. So obviously I understand that part of it. But when only 2 of 4 are asked to participate in what the cost would be. So in that, if it's going to be based on who's offering us the best price, then all golf courses in Springwater need the opportunity to bid then for the Mario's Golf Tournament.
Councillor McConkey.
I guess for clarification, I'm not saying total like, I think it has to be, in the end, a decision of council. It's not always the cost that will drive it. Like, if you get value for your buck, and I think that that's how we talked at the last thing. Yes, there might have been a golf course that's more expensive than others, but you have to look in for your value in relation. And if it's in terms with what you've paid before and it's meeting a certain criteria, council will make that decision. But to go out and just say, this is how we're going to have it in these four and that, I think that's just binding ourselves, and it's not a competitive, it's not right.
CEO Brindley?
Mr. Mayor, I mean, when the direction was for staff to look at this was to deal with the issue of equity, because there was concern about equity. And I would offer to council is, I would like to hear all your comments, because this doesn't need to be approved today. With your comments, I can take this away and you can refer it after this discussion, you refer it back to staff. I can amend this and bring it back to council, because, obviously I see things through a certain lens and council sees it, other aspects. So these comments are appreciated, and we want to make sure that we have a policy that's good. But my concern at the end of the day is it's still equity. My concern is that, we have a number of courses here that should share the wealth. That's my concern.
Okay, so do you want more comments now, or would you prefer, okay. I guess one of the comments I would make is, it's not a matter of just, I think when we talk about having discretion, obviously, they're not going to be all the same price, but, since it is an automatic rotation, quite honestly, there's no question that an upper level course where millions and millions of dollars have been spent is going to be a little more expensive than obviously some of our local courses, and that's fine because there's a place for all types of golf courses in our township. The reality is, if we saw a dramatic increase on one of our local courses that was not historic, that's when I think we should have some control to say, wait a second, yes, you're less than, the Vesper Hills and Barrie Golf and Country Club, but you're not exactly offering a comparable product. So those are the kind of things, and don't ask me how you're going to factor that into some sort of terms, but those have to be brought into play. We always talk about equity, but in many ways, there's other equitable ways of doing it. We're obviously not going to have any kind of golf programs in the summer at Vesper Hills or Barrie Golf and Country Club, for young people. Obviously, we don't solicit from them, where that might be appropriate even for the three other courses. Because one thing we don't consider in here, because they wouldn't be able to host a large tournament, would be the Featherwinds, the small course. But they could be possibly utilized for maybe some other generic recreation services. So God bless you. I leave it with you. I think we've opened a can of worms, but those would be my comments. And anybody else want to throw comments in? So Robert can maybe take all of our information and collate it in a particular way. But yes, okay. And what we're going to do, and we'll take more comments. So can I get this on the table, that the motion now before council be referred to staff for amendments? Doesn't mean we're cutting off debate, but we're going to refer to staff. So can I have a mover and a seconder for this? Okay, Austin and Richie. Okay, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, back to the discussion at hand and providing input to Mr. Brindley on what do we need in this rotation policy that maybe was not thought of in the report. Councillor Hanna.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just wanted to make sure when we approve this tonight, we didn't fetter the next council, and we didn't put wording in here that would take away from staff's ability to negotiate a fair deal at whatever golf course happens to be in the next rotation.
Yeah, I think that's the direction we're trying to go in. Any other comments or questions? Councilor Ritchie.
Well, the last time we talked about this, I know Orr Lake Golf Course had a concern, but we decided to take a back seat for this year, so Councillor McConkey could have in her ward Vesper Hills, and we did that. So I believe Orr Lake is back up. So I like the rotation. I didn't know that now we're getting into who pays for more or whatever. The fact is, there's whatever golf courses are in our municipality, we should use them and give them business. So one might be a little more than the other, but the fact is, they're in our municipality, they pay taxes, and I think we should be looking at it from that perspective as well too.
No, and Councilor Ritchie, I think we are looking at that, but at the same time, we have to have some mechanism that because they, you know, maybe they know they're in the automatic rotation, that say, well, it's coming to me anyway, so I'm gonna get what I can out of it, and I'm sure they wouldn't do that, but we still need some mechanism in our kind of policy to deal with it. Any other, okay, so we know, so we're basically referring to staff. Any other comments that we need to pass on to CEO Brindley? And quite honestly, feel free to email if something comes up, and he can incorporate it into a revised report. Okay, all those in favor of referring it? Carried. Okay, moving on, 9.10, Municipal Election Joint Compliance Audit Committee. And Madam Clerk.
Thank you. So council is mandated by October 1st in an election year to appoint a compliance audit committee. The compliance audit committee for this term of council was a joint venture with the municipality or the township of Oromajante. And for this next compliance audit committee, there are a number of local Simcoe County municipalities who have joined together to establish a committee. The committee received applications. Interviews were conducted over the summer months, and the 5 names that are provided in the report are being recommended for appointment. The bylaw for appointment would come to the next meeting of council. Now, you'll see a closed session listed on the agenda. That was in the event that council wanted to discuss specific points about a member that's being recommended. So if council doesn't have any concerns or doesn't have any questions about the members personally, then we wouldn't need to go into closed session later on in the meeting.
Councillor McConkey.
How can we have any questions if we don't know anything about the people?
Madam Clerk.
Thank you. There was a report attached to the agenda. So the closed session report had almost like a miniature resume for all of the members.
Any other questions? So I guess we best get a resolution on the table. So it can move by, or do you have a question or are you moving it? Okay. Actually, I guess we should get it on the table first. Now we've had the overview. Can I have a mover and second? Coghlan and Hannah. And I'll read what we're going to deal with. The report from the clerk regarding Joint Compliance Audit Committee, appointment of a committee dated September 5th, 2018 be received, that a bylaw establishing a Joint Compliance Audit Committee be presented to council for consideration. Deputy Mayor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor French. Just interested in how many people applied for this to get down to a short list of 5 people.
Madam Clerk.
Thank you. There are approximately 8 or 9, and the rest of the members were not, were disqualified in some form or fashion. There was one that was interviewed that unfortunately is the family member of a candidate in another municipality, so it was found out through the interview and that person withdrew their name. There were other members who were found to work for an accounting firm who might do work for the municipality, and as such their employer has said that they wouldn't be able to continue. So just through a bit of discussion, there were people that were disqualified just for various things.
Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Mayor France, through you to the clerk. Do these members receive any remuneration if there are no audits are required, or nothing, no complaints brought forward to them.
Madam Clerk?
No, there will be a slight cost due to the training. We will be providing training, but it will be split amongst all of the participating municipalities. But no, if there's no meeting, then there would be no additional cost besides that.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Nine 11, action report, council meeting schedule. Can I have a mover and a second to get this on the table? Hannah, Ritchie. The report from the clerk regarding the 2019 council meeting schedule dated September 5th, 2018, we received and approved. Any questions on this? Pretty much follows the pattern of what we've been doing. All those in favor? Carried. Information reports, to get it on the table. The report, items 10.2 through to 10.5 be received as information. Can I move in a seconder? Ritchie and Coughlin. Does anybody like to pull any of these? Councillor Hannah.
10.5?
Okay, so. Okay, that report items 10.2 through to 10.5 be received as information with the exception of item 10.5 be dealt with separately. All those in favor? Carried. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you. I'm just looking at a report here from Deputy Mayor Allen with reference to the AMO conference that he attended in Ottawa. And it's nice to get a report from people that have attended conferences, if you like, on taxpayers' dollars. So that's good to receive the report. The only thing that I found concerning, to be quite frankly, is the minister delegation comments. And I believe in the past when people were going away to AMO, they would come forward to council and ask if there was any ministers we wanted to speak to, or we wanted them to speak to, and what questions or what concerns we had to bring forward. I don't recall that happening, and so I was a little taken back, if you like, by the comments in this report.
Maybe we can get CAO Brindley. Do you want to kind of give an overview of how it all works?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We probably haven't come to council directly with respect to delegations for about 5 years now. I remember my first year, maybe 2 years we did that, but primarily the mayor and staff are aware of some of the key issues that the council, the municipality is dealing with. So primarily staff in advance of the delegations meet with the mayor. We talk about the key issues. Just so you know, the process is that we then submit those issues to the ministries. You just can't go to a ministry and say, hi, I'd like to meet with you. You actually have to say what the issues are. And then based on those submissions, then you are either granted an interview or a meeting, or you're not granted a meeting. We tend to probably be, maybe 50-50 in terms of what we're granted, because often we will ask to meet with a ministry and we're just not granted a meeting. But other times we are granted meetings. Example, we have delegated numerous times based on EDHS, the high school, and the expansion to the high school. We've delegated on transportation issues, delegated to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs with respect to growth issues. But primarily, we submit the issues, and the ministries determine whether or not they will meet with us.
Councillor Hannah?
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm aware of the mechanics. My recollection was that when the mayor, deputy mayor, or the CEO were going to go to AMO, for example, there was some input from council as to what we would like brought forward to the minister or whoever decided to be meeting with. And I don't recall that happening. That's my recollection.
Okay, I am going to make comments, but I'll make them after everybody else's. Councillor McConkey.
I was just wondering if the deputy had any suggestion how that would have changed, because it's a great report, summary in that, but when we talk about it and we see that it's just saying that you had this to me, it shouldn't belong in this report. It should have been a conversation with the CAO and the mayor privately. I don't think that this should be something in a public report when an election is going on, unless you can say how it would be changed in a policy going forward.
Okay, I do want to make a comment because it was directed at me, and I want to refer specifically to part of Deputy Mayor Allen's comments, and in quotations, he said, "I corresponded with Mayor French and CAO Brindley well before the conference, requesting I be copied on all materials about our planned delegations and request that I attend all delegations. I followed up with the CAO only to find out that the mayor had indicated that because he was not going to be attending the conference, there were going to be no delegations at this conference by the township. There was no communication with me as deputy mayor regarding this." That's what Deputy Mayor Allen said. My response is as follows. I'll start with the fact that Mr. Allen has never in this term asked about or contributed to the delegations and presentation packages made to ministers at AMO, Roma, or OGRA. I've worked with the clerk and our communications person to prepare the delegations. His participation has always been as a tag along with me as the mayor, as typically the mayor leads delegations at these events. The delegations we have presented to various ministers over the years have been fruitful, and all were based on matters that came to council first. Some of the key successes were our funding of ADHS, which I believe swayed the ministry to support the local school boards needed funding for the renovation expansion. On behalf of our local farmers, we met with the MTO to discuss half-load season and the use of specialty equipment such as telehandlers traveling on highways. We met with the MTO on the crossing situation in Hillsdale and came up with a first-in-province solution. We met with the MOECC to discuss concerns about development impacts on the menacing wetlands. We met with the Municipal Affairs to discuss changes in front-end agreements and development charge changes and potential impacts on long-term viability of small municipalities. After having done around 20 such delegations over this term, which does put our township front and center with the ministers, I have also found that the 15-minute speed dating visits not extremely productive. The generic replies we received after the delegations to the ministry are seldom wholesome responses. You can only request delegations if we have a new important issue, and I don't recall council providing any such direction prior to this AMO. In response to Mr. Allen's comment about well in advance, Mr. Allen only asked about the AMO delegations on August 7th, less than 2 weeks before the conference, in an email sent from his personal campaign email address to the CAO, and I asked that he be included and copied on such delegations, and I informed him I was not attending. Being an election year, I felt using taxpayers' money to attend conference without our council having a clear request for meetings with ministers was a waste of time and money. Delegations requests have a cutoff date well in advance, and Mr. Allen's requests were well after that date. However, we're here to advance the way we do business with the township. So in the future, to ensure there are no missed opportunities, I will ask the clerk to communicate with all of council in future delegation requests. I do ask this response be attached as part of this meeting's minutes, as I find Mr. Allen's innuendo inappropriate. Deputy Mayor Allen.
Through you, Mayor French, your comments with respect to my previous involvement, you have been in control as mayor for all the delegations. In previous conferences, I have requested to be included in those delegations, not to tag along, but to get the information beforehand and to contribute as much as you would allow contribution by other individuals at those delegations. I've been involved in some of the discussions, but you definitely have wanted to control them in the past. You cited the different examples of delegations that have happened in the past that were successful. all the more reason for that not to stop, especially with, as I stated in the report, with a new government. It was important to come up with some issues and some points that we would want to make with the new government to get the introduction. As I stated in the report, there were over 500 delegations. Each other municipality was making 4 to 8 of them, so we were conspicuous by our absence. So I think it was incumbent upon you, if you weren't going to the conference, to proactively contact me as deputy mayor and say, come in, we should meet, and we should make a request in the time frame to make the request to have these delegations.
I appreciate the comments, and I'm not going to say any more. My comments are my comments, Councillor Coghlan, and we are not here. Our procedure bylaw is fairly clear. We're not supposed to be
Point of order,
undermining.
Mayor French.
Yes?
My question, although you assume it's something entirely different, my question was going to be to the clerk and how I can handle this. We have 4 more meetings before an election, and honestly, as I was sitting here, I was embarrassed. This is our chamber, this is this council's chamber that is used to move the business of Springwater forward, not the directions of anybody involved in an election. And we have 4 more meetings before that election, and that last 15 minutes where I sat here, Councillor McConkey's points are taken valid. I just want to know what my responsibility is, sitting in this chair, to ensure that, I know I'm not allowed to use a point of order while someone's speaking. How do I ensure that we maintain our composure during this election moving forward?
Madam Clerk, if you'd like to comment.
During the election period, council still has to abide by the procedure bylaw, and it is up to the mayor to police that throughout council meetings.
Councillor McConkey.
I just want to end and say I do agree with that. It would have been nice to have a delegation with the new government, but I will also take responsibility for the lack of leadership that maybe I didn't, leaving this term of council, I didn't think of any topics. And I think, so I like what the mayor has proposed, that this won't happen again. I think we all should take some ownership to why there was no delegation there. It's not put on anybody. We're all leaders. We all missed it. And, let's not cry over spilt milk, but let's get a resolution that this won't happen again. And I look forward for that new resolution.
Councillor Hanna.
Thank you. I don't know if the clerk has the authority, but I would be agreeable with the rest of the council in allowing the clerk to make sure that between now and the election that no more inappropriate type of correspondence gets put on the agenda.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, I need a seconder for the receiving the information. And I'm not sure, 10.5. But I've made a request that this be included. How does that dealt with, Madam Clerk?
As provided for in past meetings, when something is provided to council, it can be attached to the agenda package as a separate document, just as we have for different public meetings, different delegations. Unfortunately, nothing can be attached to the minutes. The minutes make the record itself.
So we simply go backwards. Okay. Yeah, and add it to the agenda for this, as we've done before. Madam Clerk?
It wouldn't form part of the agenda, but at the agenda package on our web system, there would be an option to expand, and then you would see the additional document listed there.
Thank you. Councillor Coghlan?
Thank you, Mayor French, and through you to our clerk. Just for my own clarification, I thought that if something was read at the council table, it was to be included. I'm just clarification.
Madam Clerk?
It's to be included as part of the municipal record, but not as part of the minutes.
Follow up?
And just for my own clarification, how do we do that if it's not part of the minutes?
Madam Clerk?
We have strict rules to abide by on what's a municipal record and what isn't. It's very clear in the act that minutes are without note or comment. So unfortunately, we can't do that as part of the minutes, but I have very strict regulations in what I have to keep as a record of the township. Now, somebody just reading something as their own notes would not form part of that unless it was actually submitted to me through the meeting.
Okay, so I need a seconder to receive the 10.5. I have Hannah moved, second Coghlan. That report item 10.5 be received as information. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, on to the verbal reports. Any updates on official plan, Director Spagno?
Thank you, Mayor French. I'd just like to remind everybody that the discussion paper for the official plan and the growth management strategy are online. We're receiving comments, and it's opened up the window for comments regarding those documents.
And maybe since we have a meeting today, maybe a quick update on economic development?
Thank you, Mayor French. I'd like to inform council that the eSolutions, the township's consultant working to redo the website, will be hosting a focus group and a focus session to go over the layout of the website, whereby individuals from the public, members of council, as residents in Springwater are welcome to attend as well, to provide some direction and provide comments with respect to the layout of the new website, with an attempt to make it more user-friendly and more accessible. There are 2 sessions that are planned, depending on the number of people that are interested in that RSVP to attend. One session starts from 1 o'clock till 4 o'clock, and the other one goes from 6 o'clock till 9, and that is on September 18th.
Okay, county updates. I'll go to Deputy Mayor Allen for first comments.
August 14th was the last county meeting, and some of the items reviewed there, the Duke Dadawin site development update. There was a report on that, the update on the development of the closed Vespra landfill site on George Johnson Road as a lookout and educational attraction, featuring the Duke Dadawin icon sculpture, which is temporarily located at the Simcoe County Museum. The volunteer committee responsible for the site development, Friends of Duke Dadawin, is in the process of retaining engineering services for design and implementation of the site plan, and the committee intends to start the site development shortly, and they're in the process of raising funds. There were a couple of items related to traffic speed in our Springwater, and the first one was County Road 40, Grenfell, the speed limit reduction request. There had previously been a speed reduction request, and it had gone back to staff for collision information review over a period of time. And county staff had come forward with the recommendation that the existing speed limit of 80 kilometers on County Road 40 from County Road 90 to Grenfell Road be maintained. And they said that based on speed tests and collision review, 7 collisions over 3 years, and the Transportation Association of Canada's Canadian Manual guidelines for establishing posted speed limits, and taking into account the risk factors, including the average lane width, horizontal and vertical geometry, pedestrian cyclist exposure, number of intersections and public roads, as well as the number of private access driveways, they came to the conclusion that the speed limit should remain the same. Mayor French and myself made points against that, but that was defeated. So the speed will be maintained there as it is, 80 kilometers. The next one was Dalston, County Road 93, and County Road 11, the speed reduction request. And they had done speed tests, the county had, and the recommendation was that the existing speed limit of 60 kilometers on County Road 93, Penetanguishene Road, be maintained, and that the existing speed limit of 80 kilometers on County Road 11, Forbes Road, Old Barry Road be maintained. There had been a petition of over 50 people that had been submitted to get these speed limits as you come to a four-way stop in Dalston reduced from those limits. I brought up the point about graduating it as it comes to the stop signs and then slowly graduating it up to the existing speed limits for a distance once you start up from the stop signs in all directions. Again, discussion ensued, but the county, it was firm based on their tests that the speed limit should remain the same, and that was voted upon to maintain them, although we both voted against both of those. Another point was the SWIFT, the Southwestern Integrated Fiber Technology, Inc. The business case, updated business case was presented and it has been referred to the new government, and the hope is that they will approve it, and the request for proposal process is to have been started within this last month. And then finally, as you probably, many of you know, have read, Warden Marshall, Jerry Marshall, the mayor of Penetanguishene and the warden for the last almost 4 years, stepped down as deputy warden to accept the position of interim CAO at Wasaga Beach, Wasaga Beach. And so Deputy Warden Terry Dowdle will serve as warden for the remaining term until December.
Thank you, and I really have nothing to add to that, except, you know, they turned down our request, but ironically, there was a request for lights and that in Baxter that doesn't meet any of the requirements of the report and was not recommended by the, obviously, kind of the public works at the county, but somehow it got approved. That's my only comment on that. Councillor McConkey.
This is to our county councillors. Thank you for trying to defend this, but I think what's also lacking at the county, and that's, you know, which was difficult for you guys to also move forward these motions, is that they do not have a traffic calming policy, so we have no standards. We also have different standards within different communities. They say that they want to have a standardization, but I will take down the hill just off of George Johnson, it's a speed limit of 50. They say to me, that's a community. I said, Grenfell's a community. And they say they want to meet standards within a community, and I don't know what the definition of a community is, but if, moving forward, if we can try to get them to get to policies so that when people know and we send them there, we know the procedures and the policies that have to happen in that, because, and they have to set standards, like Dalston shouldn't be 80 and that one be 50, like, and then they actually said to me, yeah, that probably should go back up based on their new readings. So I think the county has to do some work and make some standards.
Actually, the one frightening thing was and this was comments from the experts, and maybe Director Coleman agrees with this. I don't, because one of the comments from the experts was that highways are designed for the speed that people feel comfortable driving at. That was the criteria, because I know the mayor of Wasaga Beach asked for to say that again, and so I think I think I'm seeing that right now in Center Vespra, because we have all that nice new pavement, and people feel a lot more comfortable driving a lot faster. So should we raise the speed in Center Vespra to 70 from 50? You know, somehow we, going forward, do have to have more say in what's happening in our communities, whether it's their road or not, because this is a problem. There's no question about it. And I think we just have to keep trying is my only comment on that. Okay, municipal updates. What's happening municipally? Councillor Hanna first.
Midhurst Autumn Fest and Fall Fair is on Saturday, September the 29th from 11 to 3.
Thank you. Councillor McConkey.
The Elmville BIA is having their AGM September 18th at 5:15, so it's the same day as the website design, so it might cause a bit of conflict for some of us, but I know they would like to see anyone who can attend out there.
Anything else happening? Councillor Austin?
The people in Elmville appreciate the splash pad, especially in this hot weather.
Any other? Councillor Coghlan?
Thank you, Mayor French. Minising had their annual Labor Day slow pitch tournament on the weekend. It was well attended. This year, I think the big difference was, well, they had 32 teams attend this year, which was great. And many local businesses, the committee reached out beyond the ones that are continually supporting it and had so many new businesses locally wanting to support the community fundraiser. So it was a great weekend, and in case you're wondering, yes, we did win the championship.
Good. The B side, but I'll leave it. Any other comments, activities? Okay. Notices of motion. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Mayor, and I will be bringing forward a motion our next council meeting to deal with the speeding problems on St. Vincent Street in Midhurst. I've discussions with our Director of Public Works, and the best way I believe to proceed this based on that information is with a motion to council. Everybody knows what a busy road St. Vincent is. It's probably the busiest road in one of our community community roadway, if you want to call it subdivision roadway. Anyway, I'm requesting that council consider a pilot project of stop signs to control northbound and southbound traffic entering into Midhurst to slow it down. We now have children lined up on the side streets for school buses and so on. There's no sidewalks. The sandy shoulder, difficult for moms to push strollers, if at all, and really difficult to ride bicycles. So we need to do something with the speeding. It's an ongoing problem there all the time. And I hear lots of complaints. I know we have traffic calming. Some of the folks that have just given up because they just don't want to go through the exercise of traffic calming. We did stop sign on Pool when we had all kinds of troubles there. That corrected the problem, and I'm suggesting a pilot project. We tried doing the same thing on St. Vincent.
Thank you, and we'll have healthy debate when we have that resolution before us, okay? Items for future consideration. Councillor Austin?
Thank you, Mayor French. I would like a staff report on a rebate incentive program for older homes to switch from high flush toilets to low flush ones. Other municipalities have them, and if we could look into the possibility of doing that, whether it be short-term or long-term. And to the clerk, I just emailed that wording to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McConkey?
There might be something, but I'm not aware of, but basically, I'd like to see a report that shows by department, I'd say, is the incidences in the ward. So like what I'm finding is that a lot of calls come through to staff that we don't even know about. And I might think that problem is only in one area, and yet it's in another area. And I want to know if those get closed. What are the issues that are happening in each ward, or what, like when the customer service receives a call and they receive a call, it's bylaw, and bylaws informing them that no, they can't have this much snow or whatever. I didn't know that complaint. But at the end of the year, I want to know if it got resolved, or I need to know monthly what's going on in my ward on calls that are coming into the staff versus calls that I'm receiving. So that, and also it helps council at the end of the year prioritize what are the real issues, because we're not hearing them all. And that's staff's job, a lot of it. No, and I will say, as people come from the city to move in, our older ones, they know that they have a councillor rep and they'll come to the councils often. But the newer ones, they seem to want to go to staff, and then you may not be aware of what's going on in that. And I just think that we should be able to have a database that we can just pull up and just, we can all share. And maybe I should be putting it in as a counselor when I get a complaint, so that staff know as well that it's there. And that it also will help connect all of the departments together to know what we're working on. Just a thought.
Do you have any comment on that, CEO Brindley?
Councilor McConkey, more for clarification, are you looking more for an issues list versus incidents? My concern with incidents is we get 30, 40, 50, 100 calls a day. And probably 99% of those are resolved immediately. So I'm just from a staff perspective, to log all those
Is that you have to spend time on, you know, or to answer, or if you've answered, like, okay, so say the bylaw is that snow can only be so many feet in a subdivision, and that was the answer. I didn't know that, and it'd be really neat to know in that ward, and then I'm thinking, okay, that could pose more of an issue, and I might have a discussion with staff on that, to, you know, because really, staff is just following a policy, and they've answered the question based on the policy. But as a counselor, I may look at that policy and say, I think that we may have to look at that policy, and why wouldn't we change, and have that discussion with the staff to ensure that that's the correct policy that we should have.
Okay. I know I had something during, can you remind me what it was? CEO Brindley, because I think someone told me to put it in items for future consideration. Do you remember now?
Please bear with me for a second.
Probably can wait, but I think it was something that I prefer to report on. It's okay if you can't find it, because I'm not sure you put it in writing. We just had a kind of passing conversation.
Yep.
And you suggest, okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
the concern around Airbnbs.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Director of Planning.
Yeah, my request was, because we've only had kind of one issue, but, you know, Toronto's actually going through a really interesting exercise because of following BNB and the short-term rentals. You know, is it something we need to look into, and maybe we just have a brief report, and, because I know Wasaga Beach has a fairly big problem with short-term rentals in the summertime, and they haven't got their head around it yet, but we are seeing more and more, so that's what it was. So, you know, some report on short-term rentals, and B&B is obviously the driver of these kind of activities now. So thank you. Any other items for future consideration? Okay, we don't need the closed session. Madam Clerk?
Thank you. Is there an appetite around the table for council to ask questions about the members? No, okay, I will withdraw that motion.
Okay, thank you. And so bylaws, I guess we'll need that. Can I have a mover and seconder for the bylaws? Hannah and Austin. That the bylaws listed here and be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? Carried. Confirmatory bylaw, mover and a seconder. Hannah Coughlin. That bylaw 2018-062 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at the regular meeting held on September 5th, 2018, listed year end, be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? Carried. And the adjournment, a mover and a seconder. Coughlin and McConkey. That the regular meeting of the Township of Spring Ridge is now adjourned 9:35 p.m. to meet again in regular meeting on September 19, 2018 at 6:30 p.m. in the council chambers, Administrative Center, Minising. All those in favor? Carried. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for all your input.